Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. We are live once again. It is a brand new episode of Bets and Banter. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to have a great guest that we're going to introduce in just one second. But first of all, for anybody who's new here, you're wondering, what are we talking about? Bets and Banter? We're talking about UFC Vegas 96. It's going down at the Apex Center in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's headlined by a middleweight title eliminator. We've got the natural Caio Borralho from the Fighting Nerds in Brazil, and he's taking on the Killa Gorilla, Jared Cannonier. I'm excited to see this one go down, and we can't break it down alone on Bets and Banter. We got a great guest for you. If you guys are night owls, drop a like on the show for our boy Tim Troiano in the building. How you doing, my brother from another? What's going on, my man?
Doing great, Liam. Doing great. Excited to chop it up with you and get some good bets for these people here.
Cheers to that. If you guys are not aware, this is the man from the Lambo Plays podcast. This is a man that I really respect his betting takes. You can find all his information down in the description box below. But with that being said, guys, let's start like we always do with the first fight of the evening. And I got to say, full disclosure, Tim, this is the fight I've done the least amount of research on the card. The way my responsibilities work for my writing assignments, I have to put out my main card stuff first, and then I have to put out the prelim stuff after that. So for me, I had to prioritize. All right, let me make sure I have these main card fights down. The tough fights was something I had to do a lot of due diligence on this week. I hadn't watched any tough. I hadn't watched these fighters pre-UFC fights. So I went back and familiarized myself with them. Then I see that there's this girl from Road to UFC. Didn't watch it, right? Then I'm like, okay, she's fighting Victoria Leonardo. I know I'm not going to bet Victoria Leonardo, so I could just move on from that. And then it's like, all right, well, then I need to find out why she's minus 1,000, right? It's like, clearly there's something good about her. You look at the record, went toe-to-toe with Valentina Shevchenko. Guys I respect are like, dude, she's going to take her head off. That all makes sense to me. Does it make sense to chase a minus 1,200 WMMA favorite in a UFC debut where we know even the best fighters go on to have, sometimes where they underperform in a UFC debut? That's definitely not the kind of spot where I'm going to chase it. If you got the plus 135, you're literally just laughing hysterically right now every day between then and the fight. But at this point, the line has kind of gotten to the point where certainly if there was value, it's gone. But I think that, as far as I look at it, Victoria Leonardo, girl that takes a lot of damage in her fights. If she's fighting a striker, that's probably going to be no bueno. Then I look, Wang is out there submitting her recent opponents. Probably not going to be a complete zero on the mat. That would be Victoria Leonardo's path, I feel. So I don't really see much meat on the bone here. But if somebody just said, hey, dude, it's plus 750 in a WMMA fight, so I'm just going to close my eyes and bet the underdog, I would also understand that. How do you feel about this one, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit nail on the head with Leonardo. I mean, she's just not a fighter that I want to be able to take even on a dog shot. She doesn't seem to be like, a fighter. You get a dog that is going to fight for your money and like has different paths and like is dangerous or anything like that. Like she just doesn't seem like a fighter that can take very much damage. She doesn't really have very many options for winning and just different ways that she can fight. She does basically one thing, and if it doesn't work, she usually gets pieced up. So, yeah, I'm with you on this. I think it's a classic everybody have fun tonight, everybody Wang Kong tonight situation here. I think she probably KOs her and like KOs her late, or maybe wins just like a clear 30-27 and maybe 30-26 type of fight. So yeah, I think she probably gets the finish late though, seeing how Leonardo takes damage.
Yeah, man, I have to agree with you here. In terms of how I expect this to go, I think it's more often than not going to be a finish. And I think that if it goes the distance, we're looking at the favorite getting it done. But, honestly, just seeing a girl like Leonardo out there doesn't look like she takes the sport all that serious at this point in her career for understandable reasons, but she has lost to some pretty high quality competition. That's the only thing that I will give her a little bit of a pass for. I think the way that it looks is really bad, right? It's not passing the eye test. It looks like she's not really prepared for those contests, and the wins haven't aged very well. A Mandy Bohm, a Chelsea Hackett. But you look at the losses, Natalia Silva, Melissa Gatto, Manon Fiorot, Erin Blanchfield, Miranda Maverick multiple times. I mean, those are all high quality losses. So I want to give her the fair play that, hey, she's went out there and fought the toughest girl. She's not ducking any challenges, but they're matchmaking her to go out there and get killed by people that they want to see do well. And I think that that's exactly what we have here in Kong Wang for the first fight of the night. Next up, my brother, this is a fight from the tough house, right? We've got Nathan Fletcher and Zigomantis Ramaska, two guys that were unfortunately shut down in their quest to become the Ultimate Fighter, but they could still be a UFC fighter by hook or by crook, damn it. So here they are. They're on the card at 145 pounds. And this is a fight where, you know, you've got an underdog in Zigomantis Ramaska. Nathan Fletcher here is going to be the favorite. What's a little bit interesting to me about this fight is, you know, Zigomantis is a Sambo guy, but he looks like he blows over with a hard gust of wind. The thing is, he's pretty good at the guillotine, finds a way to make that work. I would say once he gets flat on his back and somebody's like on top of him, pretty, useless from there, right? He could just be held down at times. Doesn't show a great ability to explode back to his feet if I had to make a criticism. But on the other side of things, you know, we saw him basically on the verge of being knocked out on the show. I believe he broke his face in that exchange. He got dropped. He got hurt really bad. And we just saw the absolute dog in him. He gets back up, starts whooping that guy's ass and just outlasted him, right? So we know that he's a tough guy. We know he's willing to go out there and fight hard. The fight where he got stopped, I don't know if you watched that one against Tumenov, but basically like Tumenov looked like he was a good fighter. And I don't know how his career has gone since. Bibert Tumenov, he's now 13-2 as an MMA pro. Dude, they just looked like guys that were, you know, different specimens physically. And he was landing some shots and trying to be aggressive. And this dude just stalked him, hit him with a body shot and killed him. But when you look at the other fights that he's had, you know, he's gone out there and he's made a pretty good account of himself. I thought that on Tough, you know, he showed that heart, that will. He's a big guy, you know, and that's the other thing is like, Zigomantis is going to be the bigger guy in this fight. Nathan Fletcher was doing a lot of his fights at 135 pounds prior to the Ultimate Fighter. I think if he was to go on and have a successful UFC career, I think you would be seeing him, you know, drop down to 135 pounds, right? He doesn't have a huge frame for this weight class. And if that's going to be the case, you know, I don't know that you want to have a small frame and not be able to push that grappling heavy game. That's kind of what he likes to do. I would say, he went out there and struck a little bit against Con Offley. He lost to a guy who's in the finals. So you give him that pass. Hey, you lost to one of the guys who's going to go out there and fight for the, crown of Ultimate Fighter. However, you know, when you look at that fight, the thing that's concerning is he's supposed to be the scrappler, right? He's supposed to be the guy that goes out there and wants to push that. And dude, he got mounted. He got beat up. He's giving up his back and he's a tough mother effort, right? Like Con Offley was just on top of him, dropping hammers on his head, beating him up. Position to position, mount back. Like he was just like threatening with everything. This guy stayed tough as hell. I thought it was a 10-8 first round. And then, you know, Fletcher came out and made it a more honest second round. But by more honest, I just mean, you know, he didn't get dominated. It wasn't a 10-8. He still probably lost that round as well. So you just look and I don't know that he can translate the physicality that he needs to for his grappling to be successful in the UFC. At this weight class, right? And that's where the competition is. And so Zigomantis, a guy that comes from a Sambo background that I did see win a Sambo championship with a guillotine, right? The guy shoots in, thinks he's all cool in the gang. He gets a guillotine on him, rolls him over into the full mount. That's it, right? And so I think he's got pretty good fundamentals, I would say, on his guillotine, but he's also one of these MMA guys where, you know, he really commits to it, right? 100%. So when he does that and then you pass the guard, it's just like, okay, now I'm in side control. So he gives up side control. He makes some negative EV decisions at times on the mat that could cost him against probably the better pure grappler in Fletcher. But I think the physicality and the fact that this guy's just a crazy wild man who's big, it's going to give him some chances to win as an underdog here. Do you have any thoughts on this one, Tim? I know you said some of the Ultimate Fighter matchups were the ones that you like. The Kong Wang for me a little bit lower on the priorities list this week.
Yeah, it's just haven't had much time to tape these fights, and then I got one fight on for each of these fighters on most of the tough fights except for the Loader fight. I thought I caught like 1.5 for one of the fighters. So it's like, yeah, I'm just true, you know, full transparency. I'm not, you know, super taped on these guys. I haven't taped very much, but I agree with most of your takes on this fight. I actually thought this when I was doing the Lambos with Narco tonight. I found it hilarious because I was like, I thought I was completely contrarian to like almost everybody on what would happen in this fight. Looking at the lines, I was like, okay, you know, Fletcher seems to actually be durable from the last fight with Offley. And the dude like had like a broken, I guess he had like a broken fibula in that fight. And then he came back. Supposedly he was posting that. And then you said Ramaska had like a broken face. So these guys got both like broken shit coming into this fight. But I thought that the durability, like I'm hoping that that Fletcher's really, really durable, because they're like hanging these over 1.5s on a 145-pound fight at like over 1.5 is at like plus 100. And then the decision prop for Ramaska is like plus 1,000. And then his split is like 25-1. So it's like, I just think that he's going to do more damage. And if he doesn't get, completely grappled in this situation, which I agree with you, like Ramaska's fought at 170. I think he's had fights at 170 that he's fought. And I just think that it's like, he's gonna be way bigger. If he isn't just getting taken down easily or getting back takes, I think he'll be able to get up, and I think he'll be able to do most of the damage on the feet. And it's just a question of if this guy goes full rabies in the first round and he doesn't get it, maybe he tires out, but he still does most of the damage in one of the next 2 rounds. And then you're hanging like 10-1 and 25-1 on his winning a decision. I just kind of think those lines are stupid.
Yeah, the one thing I will note is it looks like Fletcher is one of these guys that he comes out with a pretty good amount of piss and vinegar, right? He's willing to get into some of these exchanges. And unfortunately for him, he tried to grapple with Offley and it didn't work out, right? Like Offley got to the better positions and then he had to spend a lot of that energy and a lot of that piss and vinegar getting up from bottom and not getting finished. And that's pretty draining, honestly. Like it's like fight or flight mode. And, he's in a panic situation. But when you think about, this kind of matchup, I'm thinking to myself, like, if Zigomantis is able to prevent this fight from going down to the ground, the thing is he actually becomes live to finish it late. If you watch the Dominique Wooding fight, Wooding was basically like on defense that whole fight. Like he was getting taken down. But the thing was, you could just see like he was starting to work his way back up to his feet. His opponent was starting to get a little bit tired. And the one thing is Wooding I think that fight was at 135. So it's like you're seeing, a Wooding that was able to work back up, deal with the grappling situations, not get finished. And Zigomantis, again, it's not like he's a premier grappler, but might have the ability, the wherewithal, the toughness to just stay in the fight if he's in some bad spots, unless he's getting choked out. Hold on, be patient. And this guy might just tire out over the course of the fight. The one thing about going up in weight class is you don't have to cut the weight. That could be beneficial for your cardio. But the problem is that if you have, this ability to not cut weight, then you're moving around bigger fighters. And when you're moving around bigger fighters, like you're going to pay the tax somewhere, right? Yeah, everybody has to pay a cost. And so there's a point where if you're trying to move around somebody who's bigger than you, you're going to get yourself tired doing it. And Zigomantis is just like a big, awkward, long body. And like I said, he blows over to Augusta win. That's the real problem. But he doesn't do it for no reason. He does it because he's like, I'm going to try and catch this on the way. I'm going to try and like make it so you regret ever taking this shot attempt. And it doesn't work every time, but 99% of the time it works every. No, I'm just playing there. But in any case, I think that this is a fun fight. Good scrap. Could see it going either way. But for that reason, the bigger guy is probably who I would ever so slightly lean towards. The one thing people had talked about is he may have staph. It did look like he had a weird like bullet hole in his chest, but it may be different experiences for everybody, right? That didn't look like staph I've ever seen. It didn't look good. Like it kind of looked like a weird like scar, but I don't know that it looked like staph.
There was a picture.
Ramaska has staph. It's 100%, says somebody. Interesting.
Yeah, there was also a picture of Fletcher on his arm that it looked like he might have had something, a similar issue as well.
Man, did they all have staph in the house and they're just hiding it?
It's probably true.
Dude, okay, we'll talk about it when we get there, but literally Myron Santos didn't make weight for this fight at all. But we'll get there. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Just unbelievable lack of professionalism on some of these. But yeah, maybe both of them have staph. Maybe none of them have staph. I have no idea. People are saying not going to put too much stock into the staph narrative. I've said that before, and then Benoit Saint Denis gassed out in 6 minutes. So, anything's possible. But I think that trying to play doctor from home isn't always a great idea. I think I remember Steve Garcia one time looked like he had staph on his chest and killed a guy, in the first round. It's just the way it goes. So if it's like healed staph, if they're okay, then that's better to me than if they're Benoit Saint Denis and I could look at it and say, oh, that's staph. Because that one I was 100% sure he had staph, whether it was like healing or not. He said it was healing, and then after was like, no, it wasn't healed. I lied. I was like, oh, good. Okay, thanks. But in any case, my brother, let's move to this next fight. We got another women's matchup. This one is Josiane Nunes, 10-2, taking on Jacqueline Cavalcante. And she's moved to about a -200 favorite at this point in the week. I'm looking at the best available prices, and I'm seeing about a -215 on FanDuel as the best price for Cavalcante, as I like to call her. And on the other side of things, Josiane Nunes, you're looking at about a, let's see, Josiane Nunes, looking at about a +195 best available, but +190 seems like the more common number that you can get on the Nunes side. Tim, we'll kick it to you first, my brother. Do you have any strong thoughts on the ladies?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that this should be a Cavalcante fight for me. I think that she's got a lot of different measurable advantages in this fight that are going to be pretty huge in a striking battle. She's more technical. She's way taller, just longer reach, just much more processed with her strikes. She has multiple different angles that she strikes from. She kicks from both legs. She attacks body. She attacks the head. She's got a good jab. Underrated power, I think. It's kind of stupid. Like she was like around I think +300 or something like that to KO Farron. And she's like +900 or +1,000 now to KO Nunes. And I'm not saying that I think it happens. I think that it's most likely a decision for her, but I just don't think, like you can answer this as well. I was talking with Narco about this. Who has Nunes fought that's a hard striker? Like anybody? Like, is there any way that she's fought that we've been okay, well, the narrative on her is oh, she's really tough. It's no, she gets hit and she's always hittable because she comes in and she wings huge left hooks and then gets hit by people. But it's is she durable because she's taking shots from Ramona Pascal and Chelsea Chandler? It doesn't make any sense to me. It's so I just think that there's these two ladies have fought a similar opponent, and that similar opponent isn't really good. And that opponent was Farron, and Farron got over 100 strikes landed against Nunes, and 39 or something like that, 40 against Cavalcante, just because she couldn't get into range and she was way slower. And you just see the similar. MMA math is different, I think, in a situation like this where it's no, these guys have the same fighter and it's a striking battle for both. And it was the same exact matchup for both. And I just think that it's going to, I think MMA math works in this one. I think it's just something that's okay, this fighter has fought one fighter and just absolutely murdered her on the feet and outstruck her almost 3-1 or 3.5-1. And one fought pretty much evens with them. So I just think the measurables will be big here. I think Nunes is, KO or bust, and I don't think the percentages for her line is basically it's going to suit that. It's going to add up to that number.
Yeah, I like the Cavalcante side as well. Obviously, amidst the best of it, it was a much better price earlier in the week. And, when I look at Josiane Nunes, frankly, I don't often get involved in MMA fights, women's MMA fights at Chalk, but women's MMA fights in particular, just given some of the inherent volatility. And when I, looked at this matchup, I don't feel compelled to bet the Nunes side. The thing about it is I would probably just be looking at a prop or passing on the fight, perhaps looking at, if I had to pick a money line side that would look like value, I think Cavalcante is probably the side. Reason I say that is as follows. I think Nunes' ground game is very bad, really, really bad. And I had said that before the Chelsea Chandler fight. Frankly, I thought Chelsea Chandler went out there and underperformed. I don't know if you agree or disagree, but just
totally agree.
I didn't think wow, what a performance. I was why is she engaging on the feet? You just saw that you could take her down. She can't do jack. So take her down. And instead she was trying to swing and bang on the feet and make it a little bit more competitive. But I don't think that we'll see Cavalcante give up the same kind of, Chelsea Chandler does a lot of this, right? Just chin up, hands right here, and just presenting herself as a target. And I think that Cavalcante is just a lot more educated as a striker, better distance management. But here's the other, thing for me is she has some experience getting on top of women and beating them up from the top in ground and pound situations. I think that could be her, path to victory in this fight. Go out there and learn the lesson of Chelsea Chandler. Why make it harder than it has to be? She could go out there and outstrike her for 15 minutes. But what is Nunes' only chance to win, as I see it? got to bunker, right? Got to hit her with that big, she just throws that one, combination all the time. So it's like, if she can hit her with that overhand, she does some damage, right? She put Bea Malecki on the shelf forever, like prayers up for her health. Seriously, like she got concussed so bad she never fought again. So yeah, she has some power in that hand, but it's like she's gonna have to throw it, all the way up here, right? She's gonna be throwing baseball throws up top because she's trying to hit somebody who's 6 inches taller than her, right? And who's got the reach. So it's like Cavalcante has all these advantages to keep the fight at distance and do well, but also this girl's poverty on the ground. What if you just take her down, get on top of her? I went back, me, I'm a psycho. So I'm trying to look back through the, old pictures and find like, where is this girl's jiu-jitsu belt? Because most of these fighters, they don't train in the gi once they're in, big fights, promotions, things like that. But you can go back and find old pictures of them in the gi. And obviously, I'm not talking about Damian Maia or something. If there are jiu-jitsu legends and stuff like that, they always stay in the gi. But for the most part, MMA fighters, they like no gi. They like training in gloves and stuff like that, right? They don't train with the gi on as much as they advance in their career. But I want to know what belt you are. And a lot of people, it's like hidden information. You can't always find it. And so I still don't know exactly what belt she is. But what I can tell you is she in 2019 posted training to stop these jiu-jitsu people or something like that. And so I was like, yes, like anti-jiu-jitsu. I don't think she's going to go out there and try and, look for arm bars and omoplatas and go for the triangle choke. I think she's going to try and get on top of this girl and say, this girl's small. She can't move. I'm going to get to the mount. I'm going to get to a dominant position. I'm going to beat her up. So for me, I think that, Cavalcante, KO or decision, it's kind of the way I see this one going. I think she could just beat up this girl from on top. And I don't think Josiane Nunes has a clue how to get off her back. So.
Yeah, the KO prop and the KO 2, I think like the KO 2-3 as well are super interesting. What's up, Aussie? Yeah, like KO2 is like 29 to 1. KO3 is 38 to 1. And just, I don't disagree, man. I think that it's like her getting on top is just different. Also, the Chelsea Chandler fight, like I was screaming at my TV that fight. Like I had her round 2 and round 3 props, and I had like sub props for her in that fight at just disgusting numbers. And I was like, the fuck are you doing? Like the only explanation I thought, honestly, in that fight for why she was striking was it was just the fight after she ran face down away from Dumont. And it was just like, maybe she's going like, I can strike. Let me show everybody that I can strike, which is just dumb as hell. But obviously she got paid in her last fight with Yana. So good for that she lost. So, but no, I agree with you that I think I lean like it's most likely a decision, but if she does get, I just want to see how Nunes actually handles like getting hit by somebody that's, got some good power in her hands and has some good volume and good striking. As she hasn't fought anybody that's got good striking her whole career so far. So I'm like, I'd like to see it and see how she reacts to it, as well as like you're saying, if she gets on top, which, I don't know that she will, but it's just like, just depends on what she wants to go at.
Yeah, she's not a super proactive grappler to the point of Trap Lord. I agree with you, but I just think it's very easy to take down Nunes and get on top of her and stay on top of her. So that's my opinion. Obviously Chelsea Chandler comes in a little bit heavy for these fights as well. But when I was thinking about that fight, I was like, man, Chelsea Chandler is such an easy path to victory. That's why I bet her there. In this case, it's not plus money, right? It's not a girl who's going to miss the weight and show up big and put the weight on top of her. So yeah, for those reasons, like I'm not chasing this team down at minus 215, but just press for who I think is going to win. I think Cavalcante is going to win the fight. And the other thing I will say as just credit for Josiane Nunes, she lost to a big girl in Chelsea Chandler. Fair play. Wasn't the greatest look, right? But certainly she's a developing fighter. So you could give her a break. Hey, maybe she shows a better product next time out. The other thing to mention, she lost to Talia Santos. So those are two good losses, right? And I think this would be the worst loss of her career if she was to take it, right? But it's also, she hasn't fought that many quality opponents. That's why it's hard to evaluate her. When you look at the good girls that she's fought, who are they? Dione Barbosa, Bea Malecki, Ramona Pascal, and Zara Fairn. It's not really a standout bunch either.
The thing I'd add, I'm sorry. The thing I was talking with Mina Bay, and she said something. She posted something to me on DMs, and it was interesting. It was like in 2024, UFC women's MMA betting favorites have won 72% of the time. Now, obviously, there's no lines with that to see if it still is paying off. But it's interesting. I think the narrative on I've seen that actually before 2024. Narcos showed me something on like 2022-ish range, like for the year, that it was the same thing. Like it was like hitting it like. So I think there's like a weird variance narrative on women's MMA fights that it might be a little bit mythy, but I'll have to look into it a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it's all a matter of perspective, right? I could tell you from experience, I have some women's weight classes where I'm like negative ROI, and then I'm overall profitable on WMMA. So like some of them I've done real good, and some of them I've struggled, right? And even some of the best bets I've made, I feel, on WMMA didn't pay off. Like Talia Santos plus 400, I was in there big against Shevchenko, didn't pay off, right? But you just see like, there are times when big dogs hit in WMMA, which is what I would say is a little bit the trend that's maybe people are conflating the big dogs with like, every dog's going to hit in WMMA. Those
Eduardo Mora fights where she's like minus 800 and everybody's like, oh, dude, they always do this shit. And it's like, no, that one did it, so it does matter in the line as well.
For sure. I think of like a Holly Holm and these kind of things where it's like some of the biggest upsets in WMMA come on the women's side of the game, oftentimes because they're on dominant runs as well. Like they just have won every fight. It's been so easy. Ronda Rousey, Valentina Shevchenko. When those women lost, it was like massive, earth-shattering upsets. Amanda Nunes as well. That is ingrained in people's brain as much as anything else. But the other thing I would point out, and I've heard that trend come up a little bit this week, I am always a person that thinks contrarian. So the first thought I would have is this. To control, I would want to know, what is the rate at which favorites are winning overall in the UFC this year? Because for me, I could tell you, it feels like both are up. Every favorite. Like pick a category, favorites are winning more. It's like, if it's small favorites, they're winning more. Big favorites, they're winning more. It's like all favorites, I just feel, have been overperforming expectations this year. But it is something we want to monitor. Like, are we over-prescribing like every women's MMA underdog is live? I think it's certainly something to consider. Good stuff, my man. Let's move along to this next one, my brother, where we've got two men. It's Vyacheslav Borshchev taking on James Yontop. And I got to tell you, Yontop definitely fits a system criteria for me. I'm talking about a blind criteria, like based on a couple of things that are outside of like, what did I see? What does my tape study tell me? Opinion-based things. He fits some system criteria for me, which is what makes it so it's a dog or pass situation for me. The other thing is I've always been team not Slava, right? I just don't think very highly of the guy, with all due respect. I bet him, I want to say plus 160 against Duncan on Contender Series way back. And I feel like since then, he's gotten a lot of respect. He comes from a team alpha male that gets a lot of respect, I feel, at the betting window as well. They work hard. They do the damn thing, right? But I think that we always have to remember, what the danger factor is for some of these guys. And I don't think that, Yontop is Chase Hooper, right? There's not a one-to-one comparison there. Chase Hooper is a serious black belt. He's a guy that's gone out there and submitted black belts in the UFC. It's like, this guy is for real. But when you think about what are we dealing with here with the Yontop side, he's a young guy and he's a little bit bigger, right? They're probably going to get into a crazy swinging contest. And the thing about Slava is like, was he not better than Nazim Sadikov? He clearly was better in terms of the striking mechanics. Did he not almost die a death in that fight anyway? It's like, that's kind of the thing about Slava is like, you look through his fight tape, there's been a number of times when he is getting like almost knocked out and he finds a way to recover and like get his wits back about him. He is a savage in terms of he's not going to quit on himself. He's not a guy who just gives up easy. But when we're talking about big favorites in MMA, I want them to be durable. I want them to have, a path to victory that limits downside variance, right? Somebody's going to go out there and wrestle you for 15 minutes, not get tired, have a great chin. It's going to be very difficult to beat that guy, right? A guy like Slava, it's like he doesn't have that great of a chin. He's probably going to engage in a crazy swing fest that gives you a chance to win just like him. And he's going to hit you hard, like for sure. So you got to be a tough guy to go out there and do it with him. But it's like, if you're a tough person, you can stand in there and take some of these shots and not go down. Who's to say you're not going to have a competitive fight with him? Because a lot of these guys have had competitive fights with him. And then on the Yontop side, it's like last time everybody out was convinced he is a minus 400 to 500 favorite against Padilla. And I'm gutted by this one, Tim, because I always have the research to go back to, the write-up. Like, I have to put in stone every week, what do I think is going to happen in this fight? And sometimes people will give me grief because in 1 or 2 of the 12 to 13 fights I break down, I'll pick like this or this. But it's because I'm trying to give the honest opinion of how I see the fight going. Do you know what my write-up was for that fight? I said Chris Padilla by stoppage in round 1 or this guy in round 2 or 3, because Padilla was going to come out and sell out for grappling in round 1, and he could go out there and submit this guy. And that was how I felt. And he went out there and did just that. I should have had a bet on the underdog in that spot. He had a clear path to victory. He went out there and executed. Is Slava Borshchev going to go out there and slap a rear naked choke on this guy? Like, I don't think he's going to do that. Is he going to pursue multiple takedowns to make that happen? I think the answer is absolutely not. Is Mark Diakase a fucking elite wrestler that we all have to take seriously as like the best wrestler in the UFC? No, he needed his job. So he was like, fuck this. I'm going out there and putting on wrestling shoes, 2 knee pads, and I'm fucking holding these guys down if it's the last thing I do. And I was there in person, guys, in Columbus, Ohio, when Slava didn't have not a hope nor a prayer to do one thing to Mark Diakase when he said, I'm going to put my head down and wrestle. A lot of times we see a fighter gets embarrassed in a phase of the game and they go to work on that phase of the game. Would it be that surprising if Jan Top comes out here and says, fuck standing up on the feet with this Russian kickboxing madman. I'm going to try and take him down. I'm going to get on top of him. And he's not going to be very comfortable down there. That's been the story of his career. So for me, it's just like Slava was nearly submitted by Kenley St. Louis. He was nearly knocked unconscious by Nazim Sadikov. He's had a ton of difficult moments inside the cage. He's 32 years of age. He's getting no younger. He's had 2 careers in combat. He gets hit in the head every fight. It just seems like it's going to be a crazy banger, and Jan Top is going to have an honest chance to win it. So for me, dog or pass. How do you feel about this one, Tim?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. There's only a few places where I would kind of push back a little bit, like the Jan Top being able to grapple. Like, he has grappled in regional tape, and he has tried to go for takedowns and things like that. The thing is I don't think that he's gonna maybe struggle to get takedowns. What's up, Luke? I don't think he's gonna struggle to get takedowns, but I think he's gonna struggle to hold him down. Like, Slava's not like, he gets up against a lot of these guys, and a lot of the KOs that he's gotten in his career have been like round 1, guys having success taking him down. He gets up, take him down, gets up, and then he KOs him round 2 when they get a little bit tired and they can't get the takedowns. Like, he's not just going to try to sit down. Even against Chase, like, he was trying to get out of those positions, and he was in horrible positions.
That fight was stopped via TKO 15 times, and the referee, nobody told him, but it was stopped 15 times.
He had like a fucking, he was like a unicorn in that fight. Like, it was absolutely crazy that they never stopped that fight. The other thing that I'd say too about the durability, I mean, he gets hurt in every fight, and that fight against Chase, he took years off his life, and that fight was like 3 months ago. So I just think that that's another like huge sign of like, this guy's coming back pretty soon. That being said, it's just like, he does fight through these moments. He does fight through these adversity, and it's just like, I mean, I think that, like you said, like, the striking and the durability of Jan Top to me is the big question. He has shown to be durable in fights. So I kind of lean like fight goes and like probably a decision for Slava or like a split decision for either guy. I don't think that Jan Top's going to have much grappling success. He might get him down, but I don't think he's going to keep him down. And you're getting like 2-1 and 8-1 on Slava points and Slava split. And then Jan Top is like 16-1 by split. So I think those are kind of interesting if this fight goes. You never know what these judges seem to be on. Like, at least one judge is like on peyote these weeks, like almost every striking fight. You just don't know what the fuck
you're telling me Tai Tuivasa didn't win a 30-27?
Yeah, no, I really think it was kind of off. Just a little bit off. That fucking guy got kicked out. I mean, he was the other one. Who was the other fight that he did that? He did another fight that he fucked up that night, didn't he? That was
probably, but I don't remember which one.
Yeah, he did a second. That was his second mistake, because they looked at the first one and that was his second one. They're like, get this guy the fuck out of here. So yeah, I think it's more. I lean more goes to decision a little bit, or and like kind of either a decision for Slava or like a split. You know, either eye by split. So.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, my man. I think they're both tough. But I do think the one upside to Slava's game is he remains dangerous, right? He rips to the body. He does a couple things that like make it so even tough guys can go down if they get hit. But ultimately, I think it's just a little bit more competitive than the line. So, curious to see what those odds are on the decision props both ways. I'll take a look at that. Shout out to my brother Tim. But with that being said, we move on to the people's main event. Jose Medina is taking on Zachary Reese. It's going down in the middleweight division. And I could tell you, my guy, Jose Medina, does not fit the system criteria. But what he does fit is into a new pair of jeans. My brother has lost all this weight. He is looking lean, mean, like a fighting machine. The problem is Zach Reese looks way better because he's just like always been an athlete, right? Like he's always looked like an athlete. Now, I think that this line is a little bit surprising, but it's not shocking, right? Like we saw Gadzisulov was a huge favorite against this guy, Medina. And I said that I thought Gadzisulov wasn't for real. And when you looked, I think that was proven, right? I said Brenton Hiberio was going to submit him with a guillotine in the first round, and that fucking guy did everything but, right? What a guy that is. But in any case, right, you see Gadzisulov, he's not the real deal, Holyfield. He's going to get exposed soon. And when you look at how that fight went, Medina kind of showed why, right? He was like, yeah, you hit me a couple of times and like you're definitely faster, you hit harder, cleaner, but I'm just not going to give it to you for free, right? I'm not going to fold up shop like a lot of these other guys. I really want to be here still. So he just took an ass whooping and then kept trying to stay in the fight. Now, the thing about Gadzisulov is he was way bigger and he was the much more athletic guy. So he was like, I'm just going to take him down because I'm sick and tired of punching this guy, kicking him in the face and nothing happening. So then he got on top of him and that was, his easy path to victory. When I think about how this fight could go, Zach Reese is coming off a crazy highlight knockout. He's a first-round guy. You look throughout his career, first-round finishes, first-round wins. And a lot of people will fault you for that. I'm not that guy. I'm not going to fault you for getting first-round wins. Like, why fight for 15 minutes if you can fight for 30 seconds, right? Like, if you could just go out there and take people out. But you do have to ask the reasonable question, what happens if you go in an extended fight? He's had one extended fight. He lost. I think it was to Kevin Holland. So it's like, hats off to you, right? It's not like a real, what a letdown spot. But it's like, okay, understandable. But this is a guy that doesn't have experience going deep into fights. Jose Medina showed you, I'll take an ass whooping for as long as I possibly physically can, right? I'm not going down because of something unless it's like, oh, I can't move anymore, right? So I think Reese has every opportunity to make him a highlight reel for, 5 minutes. But the problem I see is like, there's a lot of conviction and confidence for number one, a guy that we don't have a great read on how he's going to do training with real fighters, probably on the juice for the first time, right? Like a couple of different boxes probably checked for Medina. Dana White brings him in on like a passion project. It's probably going to take some time for him to develop. So maybe this one doesn't go so well for him. And I think the biggest gap is grappling is hard, right? It's hard to just like, I'm not good at grappling. Give me 6 months. I'll be good. It's like, okay, like some guys, but for the most part, it takes some time. Got to invest some time in the gym. So there's a good chance Zach Reese could go out there and armbar this guy, do something like that. But we've seen Zach Reese take some, I would say, negative EV choices on the ground at times. We've also seen him end up on his back early in fights, right? Like Eli Aronoff, he takes him down, and then he was able to find the armbar from guard. Is that a sustainable like path to victory long-term in the middleweight division? I'm not sure that it is. So I think there's still some questions that we have about the Zach Reese side. There's a lot of conviction at minus 600 that you need to come in, on that side. For me, it's just a dogger pass situation on the money line. I think Reese has a path to finish it. I would be looking at Reese, early round props. If you want to get, Galaxy Brain Reese round 2 or something like that, you're like, this guy's tough. He can make it out. Maybe Reese has better cardio than we imagine. The thing is, you don't look at him and say like, this guy doesn't look like an athlete at all, but he does look like a guy that's maybe a little fast twitch and a little bit explosive and dynamic. And oftentimes we just see that that's not like, you can pick a route in life, right? You can't typically be the guy who's like, I'm going to be the most explosive first round fighter. And boy, oh boy, if we go 15 minutes, I'm going to fuck you up. It's like, normally you got to make a choice there, right? And it's like, I could sell out to kill you, but then if we got to keep doing this for a long time, it's going to be dicey for me. So I think that is where opportunity opens up for Medina. And I also just think Dana White is probably like involved in the matchmaking with this guy. based on bringing him in. That's the way that I feel from a gut level. And for Reese, he's had one great result against potentially a washed fighter, and then he had one subpar result where everybody was crying in their coffee and bitter at this guy and how the fuck was he minus 200. So those are the two experiences, and people are forgetting about that one because of what happened more recently. And he was an underdog, if I'm not mistaken, against Julian Marquez.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this, Tim?
Yeah, man, I just think you hit the nail on the head on Reese. Like, just there's like predictable data that you're trying to find out in these fights and these fighters, and there's just nothing on this fucking guy. I mean, there's like, you could watch all of his fights in about 20 minutes. It's like, and the process that, everybody likes his sub prop this week, and it's just like, I mean, why? Because he armbarred a guy from guard that took him down, like you're saying, in Dana White Contender Series, or because he got a guillotine on a takedown attempt from Aaron Phillips. Like, he's not process grappling anybody. He's not. He's just standing and banging with dudes, and like, I just feel like Medina's obviously just a piss poor grappler, and I think I said it on Lambo Plays. It's like, dude, he's basically got to have pictures of like Dana White blowing John Jones or something, and that's the only reason why he's like made it on a like Dana White Contender Series. It makes no sense. Like, the guy got fucking his ass beat, and Dana's like, "Oh, dude, get in there. You're got this contract." And then Torres Finney knocks the guy out or subs a guy and finishes a guy. And then he's like, "Nah, you need to do more." Wins another unanimous decision. Like, "Nah, you got to do more, man. You suck." It's like, why are we giving Medina a contract and you're not giving Finney a contract? It just makes no sense. And it's also like the round, like,
I have the answer for you, Tim, if you want it.
Yeah.
Age. And one other factor. Torres Finney is one of 50 middleweights that they could sign right now from the U.S. that are good. There's one guy from Bolivia, and everybody in Bolivia will be gathered around the television like, is he the guy? Is he the one? And he's got a chance to be the chosen son of Bolivia.
Like, are we going to Bolivia for a UFC card? Like, as I was saying, like, what are we doing? Like, UFC Africa, I kind of get it a little bit, but like, UFC Bolivia, we're gonna be doing it. Like, I don't get it. That being said, like, I just think that it's another one of those fights where we have no idea what Reese really looks like late. There's astronomical numbers on Medina, in round 2 and 3. I think that's up to like a complete gas job and just death gassing if Reese doesn't get it. I mean, how wrong can you be on like 23 and 28 to 1 if you're taking just round props, and it's like 35 to 1 and 28 to 1 if you're taking KO 2 and KO 3, which is most likely what happens because he doesn't really grapple. So, if you're taking those shots, I mean, they can't be that wrong, obviously, but I feel like it's also another one of those fights similar to like the Ramaska fight where I like taking shots on some of these fights. Like last week, I did this a couple times, and also like just some of the big cashes that I've had on props have been fights where everybody thinks the fight's going to finish, and then a guy that's notorious for finishing doesn't finish anybody. Rosenstrike last week, Campbell versus Charlie Campbell in his fight, Cheaty. Like, there's a bunch of fights that they've had recently in their last fights where it's like, I think these guys.
Derek Lewis, jailed and outmade anybody.
That one, ironically, I did not have. But like, I just think that it's one of those.
Me either. I wouldn't have picked that if you gave me 100 chances. So.
No chance, right? Mount for. What if you told him that he's going to have Mount for 20 minutes out of 25 and still not finish him? Yeah, I just think it's one of those fights where it's probably he probably nukes him, and it's just a question of can he survive? But it's another one of those situations where if he doesn't nuke him in the first 6 minutes or 7 minutes, why can't he just beat the shit out of him for the next 8 minutes and then just win a decision? So it's just like, I don't know if I'm going to play it, but it's not even really that great of a number. It's like 650 to win by decision, but I see everybody chasing like sub props on him at like plus 180 and shit like that. It's like, I think that's just super gross. Like that is just a gross prop.
I'm seeing Medina by decision as high as like 11.5 to 1. And sharp books are keeping it a lot closer to like plus 700, which is very similar to the price that they have on Reese by decision, which is so funny, right? Because they're basically saying like, if this goes all the way, then it's anybody's fight. But they're like, it ain't going. That's like the way they're pricing it, But I agree with you. It's being contrarian in these markets can pay because people always expect fights to end inside the distance. There's a bias towards that.
And since they changed the gloves, dude, I did the math. I put it in a Narcos Discord, and I was talking with Stargarian about it. I'm like, dude, it's 20%. It's like 20% KO rate since they switched gloves, which is just way lower than history. Like, it's just so you just get these fights where everybody thinks that the fights are going to finish, and you're just like, dude, I mean, I get it. I want to bet some violence props too, but it's just not happening. So I've always loved betting splits, as you know, and things like that. And I just think that most people like betting violence in general, but just like most fights don't finish. And in this situation, you got a guy who's just been killing everybody, and he's been killing cans. It's just like this guy's. I think he's a can, but I think he's a durable can. He's shown that he can take some damage. So we'll see if he can take more damage here. But yeah, I think it's a sneaky potential fight goes.
One thing I always like to bring up is his last submission loss. It was back in 2018, so that was like a small eternity ago in terms of his grappling preparations. I'm sure he's gotten a little bit better since then. And I think that when you're looking at, the fact that he didn't get submitted by Gajiasulov, that doesn't tell us very much because Gajiasulov wasn't super aggressive, but it did tell us like he's not just going to try and quit. A lot of fighters, they'll be underneath for a little while and be like, take my back and get me out of here. The second somebody locks something that could be considered a submission, they're tapping. And I just don't see Medina as that guy. I feel like you're probably going to need to like put him in a situation where the fight's over. Otherwise, he's not going to just give it up. That's at least my gut feeling on him and why Dana wanted to pursue this guy, right? Because you have to think to yourself, like, literally, why would he give him the time of day? One good fighter from the country, check. And then the fact that he's going to go out there and fight, and that's what Dana's looking for. He doesn't always look for, hey, he's the best guy. He's the guy who's going to be a future world champion. He's like, are you going to actually go out there and earn this money by going out there and just putting it on the line no matter what? There's a lot of people that are just trying to fight, get the money by any means necessary. Fighting is the second part of it. And this guy, I think, is ready to go out there and scrap, dude. He talks shit. He points to the ground. He's like, he's shrugging at the guy. Come on, punch my face. Like, I just kind of like the vibes that he puts out there. So Reese is not going to like those vibes. He's going to come heavy. He's going to come aggressive, and it should be a fun scrap. Next up, fellas, we got Dennis Bazooka taking on Francis Marshall. Tim, I hope you got something here for me, brother, because I'll tell you, I have had a terrible read on Dennis Bazooka fights. Every time I wanted to give this guy a chance, he sold me down the river. And then when I was like, you know what, this guy absolutely stinks, he finally knocked somebody out. So I don't know exactly where the beat is on this guy, right? I think that he probably got on juice at some point between those disappointments and the success, right? Just in terms of his body composition, his physique, he looks to be very strong and lean now. But on the other side of things, I think Francis Marshall, he used to be training at Pellegrino MMA, looked like a kid. He's not training at American Top Team. He looks like a man. Let's see how this one shakes out, my brother. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a pretty tough fight for me as well. These guys have a similar opponent as well in Matthews. And it's weird. Like, I think that Bazooka's really like a jack of all trades, master of none, just a very kind of like average dude, and not really impressive to me really anywhere, but he's not god awful anywhere either. So, and then you look at Francis Marshall, and like he's had a tough go coming in, losing, I think it was to Gomes, and then just absolutely getting massacred by Bulgarian at a line that was just comical. And he wants to grapple and he wants to push a pace on guys. And Gomes is a total weasel who's just athletic enough and quick enough that he could never really get him until the third round. He had a chance there, but it's like he struggled to get him where he wanted to get him in that fight. And standing at range with Gomes is not easy for him to get his volume off, and he just kept getting just jabbed up. And then Bulgarian's just like, it's like those situations where a grappler's fighting a better grappler and you're like, you're fucked. Sorry, man. You're not going to be able to get this guy down. He's a better wrestler. He's more physical than you. And then when he gets you down, he's going to do just mad damage. So I think those are tough matchups. I think he should have more success grappling in this fight. It's never good if Sean Woodson is getting like 4 or 5 takedowns and 5-6 minutes of control against you. And I think also in this fight, like you said, I mean, going to train with Gamrot and training with Dawson and going to the mat with these guys over and over and over has got to make him better. And it's got to show. I mean, I think also working obviously with Dawson, he's a lot more aggro and trying to get to the back and trying to not necessarily crotch sniff as much as Gamrot does. And I think that he's probably trying to work with some techniques with the jiu-jitsu, with Marshall, and just being able to kind of like grind and get to these positions. And that being said, I just think that, if it's a standing fight, I'd probably give a little slight edge to Bazooka if it's standing for 15 minutes, but I don't think it's going to be standing for 15 minutes. And I think that it's probably the grappling edge is why you're getting a pretty like a small favorite price on Marshall. I think it would be a bigger price if he had a full camp. I think it'd probably be like the 180 range, something like that. But yeah, I think it's could be like a close decision if it's striking, but I think it's also live that Marshall might be able to get a sub in this fight. I thought that the round 3 for Woodson, he had like so many opportunities to just snatch a guillotine when he's had top position on him right against the cage, and he never even did anything. He was just laying on him in round 3. So I just think that in those situations, grappling, I think it might present some sub opportunities for Marshall, or, Gracie decision either way if it's a striking battle. How about you?
Man, I just don't have the strongest take. Like, the truth is, you look at a Dennis Bazooka, he's a similar age. He's had way more fights, right? And he's from a favored camp as far as I'm concerned. Like, obviously, Aljo is like a unique case, right? He's kind of had a contentious relationship. And even recently, they called Merab stupid, but look at all the prominent positions they're put in, right? They've been given a lot of big fights, big opportunities along the way. They earned a lot of those as well. But Chris Weidman, same ilk, been around for a long time. John Vellante was getting fights 3 years after he had stopped training for mixed martial arts. It's like, you got to just like look at the picture. They give these guys some opportunities, some breaks, right? Dennis Bazooka, they basically told him as much as they told Torres Finney, like, hey man, I don't know if this is really the spot for you. You look like just an average guy. And then he was like, okay, went on the regional scene, crushed a can, basically like they told him to. And then they're like, now he's the real deal. And like, that was why they brought him in, The thing is, I do see Dennis as a guy that made some, changes in his physique, some improvements there. That was kind of what was holding him back a little bit, right? He can go out there and defend some takedowns. And the thing that wasn't great about the Woodson fight is he looked like he was just getting outmanned in the grappling by, a pretty gangly featherweight, but it was on short notice. And I think that we all had higher expectations than we should have, right? We were basically told like, this guy's in great shape. He's going to be ready for the fight. And I think that was a lie. I think they wanted to get him to fight. I think they just said what they needed to get him to fight in public, but he wasn't ready for a training camp. He wasn't ready for a real fight. And so he was like, I'll get in there, I'll get my foot in the door, and then we'll see how it goes from there. And so both of these guys have one UFC finish under their belt. Both these guys have had some tough looks within the UFC. I think that they both had a pretty tough deal out as well. Melsik Bagdasaryan as a Contender Series fight back in the day for Bazooka wasn't really an easy layup either, right? It's like, go out there and fight this guy who's going to kick the shit out of you all night. And even in that fight, he showed some heart, some resolve, some willingness to keep fighting. So I don't have this, take your hammers out and bet this, but the one thing I will notice is this following fact. There's a lot of cohesion with these guys from the Serra Longo team. They're trying to peak for Merab right now. They have a big fight coming up at the Sphere. I'm sure that there's a lot of work that's been put in on that side of the ledger. Francis Marshall's doing all the right things, going to the right gym, going to the right places to get better. But oftentimes it takes 1, 2, 3 fight camps. Shout out to my guy, Dan Tom MMA. He used to talk about that, where let's say a fight camp has a different system. They call the moves differently. They instruct you differently. Now you got a whole different corner, or you're replacing one piece. Things can get different. And sometimes that's what it takes, right? Radical change. And then you start to find your groove. You start to find a system that works. But sometimes it's just a little bit like the gears aren't quite rotating the right way. When you first go to that new team, you still have to work that out a little bit. And I think that could be a little bit of a hang up here for a guy like Francis Marshall, where he's making the right decisions. He's making the, committed attempt to improvement, but does he have as many reps under his belt as a guy like Bazooka, who's had all these professional fights? That might be the difference maker here in a close fight. For me, a fight I do think is probably going to go the distance more often than not, but anything's possible, right? Both these guys have shown in their UFC wins, they went out there and got the finish in different ways too. Bazooka kind of got to it early, was landing some powerful shots. And on the other side, Marshall went a little bit to war with Rojo in that fight, but he just showed himself to be the more technical guy, a little bit more, committed to his offense over the course of 15 minutes and eventually put him out, I think, in the third round there in a very, fun fight. So I think both these guys have a capacity to put on a fun scrap. And I don't think it's going to look like Gomis, right? Where he's like circling the outside and just making Marshall chase him around all night. I think they're going to get to it. I think there's going to be a lot more activity here, but it's still probably a fight where I just favor both guys to be tough enough to make this one over the 15-minute mark. Speaking of guys I don't think are going to see 15 minutes, we've got the opener on the main card. It's Edmund Shahbazyan and Gerald Meerschaert, GM3. My guy, GM3, follows me on Twitter. So I have nothing but love, respect, and admiration for Gerald. I think he's a great fighter. I think he's claimed so many wins for jiu-jitsu that he deserves a special badge of honor, right? He'll go out there and knock out, Bruno Silva and then just put him in the choke as a formality, right? A mere formality for this man, Gerald Meerschaert. When you look at what he brings to the table, what he's good at, I think he's good at striking, and people don't give him any credit. But he's just slow, right? What is he good at? He's good at offense, right? Any kind of offense you want to do. You want to do offense on the ground, he'll go ahead and choke you, right? He'll put you in some bad situations. He'll get a hold of your neck. He'll put you in 10 different submissions, finish the fight, right? Guillotines, rear naked chokes. He's done it all. But then the downside is he doesn't have any defense. He's just very, very slow. So he's like here, and he does a little bit of this and a little head movement, and he'll throw that open side body kick. He's a southpaw. He'll throw that left hand, but a lot of times you just see that Gerald is a little bit, reactive, and he's a little bit tight at the beginning of a fight. And as he starts to get some offense going and the other guy starts to get a little tired, you see him start to get a little bit more flowy and natural with his combination work and his striking, because then the guy can't react as quickly, right? So he's starting to get, taking advantage, right? He'll damage them to the body with that big kick over and over, and he'll just chip away at you. And then by round 2 and 3, people don't realize he's been losing the minutes, but he's been taking pieces of them, and then he wins the fight. That's kind of always been his MO. But the problem is, you see people after all these fights that they've had in their career, their chin deteriorates over time, badly, right? And when I look at a guy like Gerald getting knocked out by Ian Heinisch, that for me was kind of the end of the road, right? In terms of him beating the best guys, Khamzat Chimaev, it's one punch later, right? It's hey, how are you? One punch. Thanks for playing. It was a fun fight while it lasted, right? He's already signing off to his family. Oh, thanks, guys. It's a tough look for Gerald, right? Because it's a cage fight. You need to be able to take the shots in order to keep going. So for me, you give him a Brian Barberena, a guy who hasn't fought at 185, a guy who's former 170, 55er. You should go out there and put him through the paces. It's a good look for Gerald, right? Go out there and show he still got it. Brian was getting up. Brian was looking all right. Brian was doing well in the striking. I was like, yo, Gerald, don't let the wheels fall off against this guy, man. And then he's, a savvy jiu-jitsu guy. He eventually got into good positions, put Brian to sleep. No skin off your nose there. Gerald is a consummate professional. He deserves all the acclaim. He doesn't get enough acclaim for, I believe, every win he's ever had in the UFC is inside the distance. This guy's a proven finisher, but he's not a great mark to the decision, right? You see these fights go the distance. Hasn't gone well for him historically because it's not a very visually appealing style. Like I mentioned, he's moving in slow motion. He's just doing big open side body kicks and a handful of 1-2s. There's not a lot of great aesthetics and sophistication. It's a little more meat and potatoes. It's a little more grindy. For me, the ultimate problem for Gerald is he is at his best when he can be physical and outweigh on people and get them tired and all those things. And I could definitely see how Edmund fits some of those criteria of he could get tired over 15 minutes. He's a big, muscular, hunky guy. It's all true, right? But when I'm thinking of when you look at how he does in the wrestling and the grappling, first of all, he's not a bad wrestler, right? His last fight against AJ Dobson, he got hurt badly on the feet, and he said, yo, fuck this. Inside trip, sat him to the ground and was like, dude, take a couple seconds, deep breaths. That was smart fighting, I thought. You can't do that against Gerald, though, right? So you got to be more disciplined on the feet to not get hurt because there's no bailing yourself out with takedowns. But what I mean by that analysis is this guy can wrestle. He's not a guy who doesn't know how to wrestle. So what I know is he can go out there and in the early going, he should be able to D up the offensive attempts from Gerald Meerschaert, who's not a great wrestler. Guys, a lot of fights for Gerald. He's losing round 1. He's losing round 2. He's trying to wrestle a little bit, and it's not going anywhere. That guy's stuffing it. But when they get tired, they make a mistake. They try and wrestle him. Dustin Stoltzfus wrestled him all night. What's the problem? He got tired in round 3. Gerald could keep going. He submitted him then. That was the way that it worked. But when guys go out there and try and punch him really hard in the face, they have a lot of success. They have it right away. And Andre Petroski is a known gasser, guys. Andre Petroski is a guy that people think of as not very durable, right? Can't take a great shot. He got hit by a hip. He falls over. These are the things that people say, right? He went 15 minutes with Gerald Meerschaert. He knocked him down. He was able to outlast him on the cardio. He's a black belt. That's the difference as well, right? We always want to talk about it. That's the difference. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Can kind of shut down the grappling game. But for me, I just look at this fight and I say to myself, Shahbazyan, they all have that similar archetype of name, right? Shahbazyan, when I look at this guy, he's knocked out Brad Tavares, a guy with a legendary chin in the middleweight division. Literally one kick, bing, just punted his head out of his, his ear was leaking out brain. It was crazy, right? This guy hits very, very hard in the early going. AJ Dobson, guys, looked like he was having the fight of his life. He came out on fire. He was fighting good. He's throwing inside low kicks. He's throwing great combinations. He's looking sharp and fast on the feet, fast as he's ever looked. And then all of a sudden, Edmen Shahbazyan hit him, and his life changed. Like everything instantly changed when he got hit by him. And that's a guy who's very durable. That's a guy who can go out there and fight and get hit a bunch of times for 15 minutes and stick with the fight. The problem for him has been cardio. It's been, pacing himself over 15. It's been doing enough on volume. It hasn't been durability. And so I thought he was going to have some interesting moments to exchange with them down the stretch. He didn't get down the stretch. He got finished brutally. So you give me a guy who's way less durable here in Gerald Meerschaert, and I don't think he's as physical, as dynamic, as athletic as a guy like Dobson who's getting back on top of him. It's like, I think this is a spot where, in all likelihood, Shahbazyan is going to be too much man, too physical, too young, too athletic, and I think he's going to really hurt Gerald early. I think Gerald's going to be busted up. He's going to be a mess. So I don't think he's going to have a great path to recover in this fight. The one, alternative case that my guy Jewish Better laid out on the first look this week that I thought made some sense as well is like, what if Edmen just dictates behind a jab? Is there really anything that GM3 could do to stop that except try and wrestle him, try and grab a hold of him? I'm not really sure that there is. So I wouldn't hammer Edmen ITD, but I do just think like Edmen is probably the side in this fight. As much as I love Gerald, I'll be the first guy to take my hat off and salute him, say cheers to GM3, cheers to GM3 betters, all that. You guys know I'm not a hater, but it's just, for me, I've bet him in the past. I've liked him in the past. Every fight is different. Every situation is different. Makhmud Muradov doesn't have stopping power. So I was like, yeah, he's going to hit Gerald really hard, but Gerald's going to not fuck off, and he's going to kick him in the body. He's going to make him uncomfortable. And if this guy is used to being the hammer, he's going to, be a little bit, weary of this. I don't feel like it's like that for, a guy like Edmen where, he's worried about somebody like Gerald physically. I think he's much more worried about gassing himself out. I'm worried about him getting in his own head rather than him having a problem physically with Gerald, personally, just based on looking at their physicality, how they stack up against each other. What are your thoughts on this matchup, Tim? I find it fascinating.
Yeah, I do too. And I was talking, DMing with Jewish Better after you guys pod earlier this week when I was watching it. And I was thinking literally the same thing. And I said, confirmation bias has been sent. Like, I think that it's another one of those fights that could just be a super, super sneaky. I don't disagree with you. I think if it gets out of round 1 and GM3 survives, I could see a bunch of different things and outcomes of the fight. Like, I could see, depends on how much he's trying to push the grappling. Like, that's the other thing about GM3, about these other fighters that have totally gassed out and dominated Edmen. It's like they're pushing hard grappling. Like, you got Brunson, amazing wrestler. He was getting Brunson when Brunson was Brunson as well. Like, before he started getting shot, before he started losing his durability and cardio, and he just completely grappled him the whole fight, beat the living shit out of him for 3 rounds and finished him in round 3. Jack Hermanson, criminal that he didn't get the finish in round 3, but the same thing, like 7 minutes, 8 minutes of control, just dominating. And Jack has some of the best ground and pound in MMA. Like, beat the living shit out of him in that fight. And didn't get the finish in round 3. Anthony Hernandez went for like 6 for 15 on takedowns versus him in that fight. And I think Edmund even got a takedown against him. So it's like you're saying with the wrestling, it's like he's not like just a piss poor grappler that can just be taken down by anybody. It's like these are elite grapplers that are taking him down and just raping him on the ground. Like GM3 is not known to like just totally go for his wrestling fight after fight, round after round, and just, you know, chaining takedown after takedown after takedown. Like you said, he strikes with guys, he gives them opportunities, he lets them basically beat him and tries to get his kicks off to their body, especially to tire him out. And then after they make a mistake, then he's super opportunistic. But it's not like chain grappling and just chain wrestling and grappling the cage push to getting these takedowns. It's like usually mistakes. And then he capitalizes. Like it's just, so to me, I could completely see if he doesn't get murdered in round 1, I could completely see, you know, Jewish Better's point on this. I was thinking the same thing. It's like he could fight safe. Like he could fight at range and just be, I'm just going to stay at range and not push my gas tank and get to round 2. Or he could beat the shit out of him in round 1 and not finish him, and then have GM3 just be in a state where he can't really do anything anyways. And it's just like, and then he just wins one round and he needs to survive round 3. So I could see that happening as well. So if you're on the GM3 and you're doing like the GM3 round 3 sub, I think like just taking round 3 is better. I think like the KO props on him late for KO2 and KO3 would be better than just the sub, based on just like how Edmund loses. Like he doesn't give guys subs. He just gets in a position where he shells up and then he lets guys beat the shit out of him. Like same thing with like Fluffy. Fluffy's similar to GM3. Like he's, like you said, he's trying to get his jits teachers to get another stripe on his belt. And he's just like, and he wanted to take the neck and he's just like, no, he's not giving him his neck. Just like, all right, I'll just elbow you to death. So I think people that are betting the sub props or late sub props instead of the round or even potentially round and then KO props for GM3, if he does get there, I think they might be disappointed. I think a GM3 decision to me, I don't really see it happening unless it's I can see like a draw happening more than a GM3 situation where he gets 2 rounds and he gets 10-8 in round 1, or he loses the first 2 rounds and he gets a 10-8 himself. Like I struggle to see a GM3 decision.
Fair enough, my brother. I think that for GM3 to win a decision, it would be a lot like, the Jack Hermanson type fight, where he's just getting a lot of top time in the second and the third round. Edmund, the one thing about him, right, is like, let's say that fight against AJ Dobson obviously knocked him out, right? Let's say he had hurt him really bad. Dobson recovers and the fight sees round 2. What does Edmund's cardio look like going into round 2? I think that's an honest, open question. When you look at that fight, I have my speculations that it would have been very bad because he was out there spending a shitload of energy, right? They wrestled hard for like 3 minutes and then he was going wild on the feet and he almost got knocked out. So for me, I'm like, that would have probably ended really poorly for him. The difference I think here is Gerald doesn't have the same physicality to make him work that hard in the wrestling necessarily. But if Gerald can just enforce like staying close to him, it's the apex. That's the one thing I will say is it's the apex. In the apex, you can push guys back to the fence pretty easy at times, like just a lot less real estate to close down on them. So I guess that's the bullish case for Gerald. And I do think Gerald is not going to win a decision more often than not, right? Every win in the UFC is a finish. The guy's a finisher. If he has somebody in a position where they can be finished, he's going to try and finish them. The other thing I will say is you look at a guy like Jack. Yeah, I agree with you. His criminally didn't finish. I had his finish props. Of course, he just sold on me like a bastard. But in any case, you look at that fight, Jack was in need of a win. And he had a guy that he knew he could beat. And he was like, I can't fuck this up. I can't fall over the top. I can't make a big mistake. I have to just stay disciplined here. And so he was very conservative with his approach on top. Gerald is anything but that, right? Like he is effective and like consistent, but he's not super conservative. He's going for the sub. He's going for the neck. He's constantly hunting for it. And sometimes to his own detriment, right? Like go for a guillotine, end up on bottom. Rare, but it does happen. I think for the most part, Gerald is just a constant attacker. And he has a very patient game. So if things aren't going his way, he's going to try and just look for a way to get back into the fight. But it's going to be an uphill battle, right? I think he's going to be getting his ass whooped really bad in round 1. So for me, the potential way I would look to get involved as well, live entry on Gerald after one round. The bookmakers get smart to it sometimes, like, not giving you a huge, crazy plus money price, but it'd be kind of hard for them to adjust it down if, Edmund goes out there, wins a clean first round. Let's say he dominates, right? Lights him up in round one. You could potentially get a big plus money number on Gerald after the biggest danger, right? The biggest chance of him getting finished has already passed by. I think that could be an interesting way to get in on it.
Yeah, they're usually like you said, they're a little bit smarter with those lines, especially with fighters that are known gassers. But I think you're right to look to bet him live. I would say after like the minute to minute and a half range or 2 minute mark of round two, because like I still think Edmund can still fight to that point, and I think he still might even be having success. But after the 6-7 minute mark, that's when you probably are going to get at least double where his money line was starting at the beginning of the fight, and probably maybe even a little bit more. Probably, I was saying, Aussie was asking that, and if it gets to either round two, he's down 2 rounds, and it's 20-18, what's the line going to be? It's like at least plus 800 to plus 1,000. Like it's just going to at least be that. So it's just like, and then you just have a choice to, if you think he can get it at that point. I think in the middle of round two, like you're probably going to see 600. You're probably going to see 500 to 600 in the early parts of round two. Maybe even in round one if he's getting his ass totally beat.
Yeah, and I just think to myself, like, he's gotten round 2 against Barb, round 3 against Bruno Silva, he knocked his ass out. Round 3 against Dustin Stoltzfus, round 2 against Muradov, round 1 against Bartosz Fabinski, which, by the way, I think the sub prop was like 3-1 there. I'd have to go back and double check, but absolutely comical plus money on that against Bartosz, who was like a complete mark to the guillotine. I was like, are you guys kidding me? But in any case, he lost to Khamzat, fair play. The Duran win fight, round 3. Trevin Giles, round 3. Oscar Pachota, round 2. Eric Spicely, round 2. Essentially, since the Ryan James fight, he's had one finish in the first round. Everything else is round 2 and round 3. I know how I'm going to bet this fight, right? I'm going to look towards either a contrarian angle on Edmund or, maybe some GM3 love. But I think that, it's a fight that has a logical binary dynamic, right? One guy can win it early. One guy has a chance to storm back late, make it interesting. But I think you'd have to finish the job. So fun scrap. Next up, my man, we move on to another main card bout. And this one is going down in the welterweight division. We got Michael Morales taking on Neil Magny. And I have faded Neil Magny to the tune of 20 units of profit. So I basically don't fade my own system there, right? Which is I either look for a way to fade Neil Magny or I avoid the fight. I think I one time bet him inside the distance small against Daniel Rodriguez. And I still bet Daniel Rodriguez by subbing that fight just in case. I think of a guy like Magny, it's just an easy mark on the mat, typically speaking. I think that Michael Morales is unlikely to, just easily, submit him with an omoplata or something like that. I don't think he's like higher level than Magny on the ground, but do I think that he's like way physically stronger and could probably just pick this guy up and throw him out of the octagon if he wanted to? I think that's pretty plausible. Dude, just look at how he moved Veretnikov, who's a big horse of a man himself. Dude, he's throwing that guy around like he was a ragdoll, and he was 21 years of age. He's now 26 or whatever he is. Or 25. Dude, he just looks like a physical Adonis. I think he's a freak in terms of his strength, and he's training with good guys, so he's getting better. He's getting more experience. He's gotten the cage time under his belt. I just think he's checking a lot of boxes. Like, do I lay minus 850s in MMA? No, because I've been here long enough to know how stupid this sport is. Things that don't make sense happen all the time. I mean, frankly, between you and me, Neil Magny had no business beating Mike Malott. Michael Malott beat himself, right? He just lost the fight. It was completely boneheaded and insular, and didn't say great things about his ability to respond to adversity, cardio, things like that. But it's also, hats off to him, right? He's still a cage fighter. He wins a bunch of fights. He does his thing. It was just a tough look, right? Because he had a great opportunity. He was up huge and just blew it. So you just got to be honest about it and call it the way you see it. Did I see Neil Magny go out there and fucking make some championship adjustment? No, I saw Mike Malott go out there and, mentally blow it. So I think that Magny's still a tough guy. He's still a willing fighter. He still wants to be there. Training with pound for pound Muay Thai, a great gym, putting in the rounds, putting in the work. Tough guys come through there. UFC fighters come through there. So I think that Magny is like, a good, interesting underdog, most of the time, right? He's performed very well as an underdog. One of the most prolific in the history of the welterweight division, no doubt about that. But I do think his days are starting to become numbered in terms of how long he's going to be able to do this. His fight style, not very visually appealing. When he does set back a prospect, it's typically by like making it look really ugly, pushing them into the fence, holding on to them, slop fests. And I don't think that the UFC loves that, but they love the fact that he says yes to everything, goes out there and fights all these tough guys. I think Ian Gary should be, hanging his head in shame that he didn't submit this guy. It was a fucking free win. As soon as he gets to the ground in round 3, he's locking up a head and arm choke before he even gets to the ground. I just couldn't believe what I was witnessing. He'd rather do a leg kick exhibition for 15 minutes. But in any case, right, I see a Michael Morales as a guy who could go out there and kick his leg. I see him as a guy who could go out there and take him down. I see him as a guy who could knock him out by accident with his hands. He's a powerful guy. He's not the most powerful guy you've ever seen, but he's going to throw, try and connect. Magny, I don't think, has great defense, right? We saw against Phil Rowe, he's getting hit pretty cleanly in that fight. We saw against, what's his name? I bet pretty big against him and lost. Griffin, right? Against Griffin, he got rocked badly in the first round of that fight. And honestly, again, Max Griffin, how did you lose that fight? But in any case, I just think he got power bombed in the 3rd round. That's how he lost that fight. Worst visual I've ever seen in a UFC fight for a guy that should have been up 2 rounds. But you look at what Magny does, and he just exists long enough, keeps pushing, doesn't give up. He's like the Jose Medina of the welterweight division. I'm kidding, of course. He's way more skilled. But you just look and like he doesn't give up on himself, right? He'll take a little bit of a beating. He'll get thrown around a little bit, try and find a way back into the fight. But I think real prospects, guys that are like going to be around for a long time, they're going to beat Magny. I think they're going to do it very easily, right? I always say I resent the word lock in MMA, right? I say I don't like these prices, but think about this. Shavkat Rakhmonov was minus 400 against Magny. And now you're being asked to pay minus 850 for Morales against Magny. And I do think like that something there is out of whack, right? In my power rankings, I still got Morales well below Shavkat. And it's not to say that, he's not going to have a great career. He's going to have a great future, a great career. But he's just not as dangerous and as lethal as a guy like Shavkat at this point, right? And Shavkat, you make one mistake, he will finish the fight. He'll have a competitive scrap with you and then kill you. He's that kind of guy. And we've seen him face adversity and come back before as well. So I think that in this spot, I see a guy in Michael Morales. He's gone to decision a few times. He could do that again here. But I think that we saw a young fighter not take advantage of some clear signs somebody was quitting against Veretetnikov, right? Like Veretetnikov was basically at the end of round 2 and at the end of round 3, like, bro, I have nothing left to give. Okay, you got me. And he just didn't snatch his neck or do something like throw like 10 committed ground and pound shots. He was just like, content to like throw him again and like, throw him again. And like, the crowd oohed and awed. But it was literally just like an inexperienced kid throwing this guy around like he owed him money. And I think that now he's a little bit more sound. He's a little bit more confident. And he was talking in interviews like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to show that my wrestling's gotten so much better. I thought the wrestling he showed against Veretetnikov is enough to throw around Magny. So if that's the case, if it's gotten better, let's see if he can implement some, advancing of position. Let's get him to the ground. Let's advance position. I think that's possible. I think Magny is just not physically strong enough to prevent a lot of these really big, strong, physical welterweight prospects from doing what they want on the ground. Mike Malott, guys, used to fight at 145. Michael Morales would have to chop off that fucking leg to make 145 pounds, 100%. So I just think that we're dealing with, a big, strong welterweight, and that's not really an answer that Magny's looking for as far as I'm concerned. What do you think about the betting lines on this one, Tim?
Yeah, I think, like you said, man, the money line is just kind of comical at this point. There's no logical reason that Shavkat should be minus 400 and Michael Morales should be minus 800. That makes no sense from a money line perspective. But I mean, also Morales has fought close in some of his fights, and he hasn't necessarily put, gigantic stamps on these fights or rounds versus fighters that he was a huge favorite against. That being said, I just think that he's going to know the assignment here. I mean, like you're saying, he's going to know that he can wrestle. He could kick the leg. Just the defense of calf kicks for Neil is just obvious that he just hates him, and he doesn't defend him, and he's got twigs for legs. So it's just an easy target. Kind of opposite of what we were talking about with Edmund, with getting finished and like ways that guys get finished. I think that Magny is shown to be durable to not durable. It's a bad word, because like he gets his ass kicked and he has been finished by KO. I think he's lost, but finished like 75% of his losses, but he hasn't been KO'd, I don't think, since like 2018. But he just doesn't give these guys, he gives up in subs. Like, I just think that that's where he doesn't really fight through adversity. And I think that the situation with Morales, like, I don't think that the sub is like, oh, this is a really, he's going to, we're looking at certain fights. And I think both of us like to really pinpoint certain fights by sub. It's just like, this is a fight where I looked at the sub prop and I looked at the sub 2-3 and I'm like, sub 2-3, like this morning or yesterday morning was 23-1. I'm like, I have to bet this. Like, I don't, it's a system bet, like, against Neil Magny. Like, I know the guy can grapple. I have to bet this, even if he doesn't always go super aggro for subs or hasn't shown that he likes to really progress and advance positions and really do these things. So I agree with you that he could just be way more physically strong. He is way more physically strong. And I just think if he takes him down and he takes that approach, that being able to pass, reign some ground and pound, he's just going to probably give his neck up. I mean, it just is something that he typically does. So I hope it's a little bit stand up for the first round or so, and then I hope he takes him down in round 2 and 2 or 3, and then just takes his neck. But I don't know what this guy's going to do. I never really know what Morales is going to do in these fights. So when you think he has like a really big edge to do this or grapple, he doesn't. He stands at range and boxes with guys. And when you think he might box, and he's taking down Veretnikov and he's taking him down all day long. So it's just like, don't really know what he's going to do. But I hope he fights the easiest path here and takes him down and subs him in 2 or 3.
Yeah, the one interesting note about that for Veretnikov fight is he actually was, sorry, I got distracted by Londo in the chat saying GM3 KO plus 1400. Yeah, you're a little crazy. It's not to say it can't happen, but it's certainly like a path to victory, right? It's just you're getting huge prices on him, probably ITD, probably by rounds, all those things. So, I would just look at all the different ways you could play it and calculate your own EV. But there's probably big plus money prices across the board for GM3,
KO2, KO3, 49 and 50-1. Why go for 14-1?
Oh, snap. Oh, snap. So we got options, right? I think that's worth considering. But my train of thought is completely lost. I think that on the Morales and Magny fight, I don't know if I want to get caught, trying to guess here, right? Like, to your point, I kind of have a feeling he's going to wrestle and like try and rip this guy to the ground, but I just don't know that I have like the greatest feel. And Morales can go out there and win this fight a number of different ways, but he did get beat up in round 1 against Veretnikov, and that's what prompted him to wrestle, right? He wasn't like out there like, oh, I'm going to wrestle. He was like losing the first round, and then he was like, shit, I need to change things up. So he's lost a couple rounds in the UFC, but he's also done a pretty good job, in terms of finding ways to win. So I like his attitude. He said, like, I don't view, being undefeated as pressure. I think of it as like, an opportunity to go out there and compete against myself every time. And so he just seems like a mature guy coming into his own, but still not an English speaker, working on developing himself in a lot of different ways. And I think that he's still somebody that people should pay attention to, but definitely the most difficult and experienced opponent he's had on his record to date. Next up, my brother, we got Con Offley taking on Myron Santos. And now we're going to get to it, right? Because I said before, we'll get to it later. This guy, Myron Santos, man, absolutely unbelievable. Amateur hour in Vegas. This guy's got half his foot hanging off the fucking scale, and they just let him weigh in anyway. And so that's the one thing that really pisses me off about this fight, frankly. It's just like, this guy didn't make the weight. He didn't make the weight last time. He didn't make the weight on the show. Like, I don't know that this guy's a featherweight at all. He'd probably be fighting at lightweight, his first fight in the UFC. So that's a little annoying to me, right? This guy's fought as high as 176 pounds. He's just trying to cut as much weight as possible. He's cut as low as 125. So he's been fighting since he was, young guy. on the come up, and he's had a lot of fights, but I just have to, come clean that I wasn't impressed by this guy as everybody else was on The Ultimate Fighter. Number one, from the weight shenanigans to the, pretty meat and potatoes striking affair, right? Like, he was doing a decent job picking at different targets, legs, body, head, mixing up his targets, mixing up his weapons, using his hands, using his low leg kicks. But when I'm thinking about this fight, I'm like, we saw him get taken down by Edwin Cooper Jr., who I didn't think was, like some lights out, remarkable, top player or something like that. And honestly, watching that fight live, before I had watched all the fights, I was posting my reaction live as I watched out each fight. Like, I was like, watch it, then post my reaction on Twitter. And I had said, like, this is a guy, in Myron Santos, who barely scraped by it, and it looked like Edwin Cooper Jr. just threw it away. Like, he's out there, like, just not throwing. His coaches are like, make a decision. You have to attack. Go, please. Like, they're like pleading with this man, like, just attempt offense. Go for a takedown. Do anything that you did in round one that was successful, and he wouldn't do it. It was just like he was, like, stuck in the mud. He couldn't move. And maybe he got tired. Like, maybe something happened. Maybe mentally he just broke. I don't know what happened, but it was not a good look, I feel. And his opponent just let him off the hook, right? Then this guy gets, I believe a 37-year-old opponent, and a guy that could wrestle a little bit, but really I wasn't impressed by his wrestling, despite some credentials on paper. He basically had like big throws and like crazy up top throws. But in MMA, most of the guys that get people to the ground are the process wrestlers, the guys that can get into your legs and hold on to you and rip your legs out from underneath you along the fence line. That's what's more successful. And I think that that's what we're dealing with here with Con Offley, right? And I think Con Offley was the more impressive and the most impressive guy on the season at 145, in my view. Now, what did he show us? He went out there, he beat Nathan Fletcher, and Fletcher, I think, is a little bit undersized. I mentioned that before. But what I did also think about that was, like, he went out there and beat the shit out of Fletcher, and it looked like he was trying to spend everything to finish the guy, right? Like, he was out there selling out for the finish, but then he comes out in round two, and when his guy was supposed to come back and storm back on him, he picked his shots. I thought he landed the better work on the feet, and he got back to his takedowns. He got back to his offense. He got back to his wrestling, and I was like, man, this guy has an idea of how to win a fight, right? That was only a 2-rounder, but, he looked like he was ready to go 3 in terms of cardio, and he won the first 2 rounds. Like I said, I thought he got a 10-8 in the first round. So then I look at, okay, how did he do in the second fight? There was a South African wrestler, comes out, grabs a hold of him in the rear waist cinch, tries to rip him to the ground. He gets back up, tries to rip him to the ground. He turns in like Davison Figueiredo, Alex Perez, guillotine. Thanks for playing, buddy. Submits him, right? So it was literally like that, quick. And I was like, man, that looked good. Like, this guy is a black belt, and he showed top pressure against Fletcher, almost submitted him, beat the tar out of him. Then against this guy, you want to take me down? You want to wrestle? Okay, buddy. And then he just turns in and submits him, made it look easy. So I was like, this guy has some good offensive, defensive jiu-jitsu. He looks like he can mix it up in those different phases. And then what I had said was on my last show, I was like, I need to go back and watch this guy's regional footage, because it's one thing to go out there and beat a couple guys on The Ultimate Fighter, but what did you look like on your regional scene? That will give me a better idea. And Ken Offley is 31 years of age. I think he's a finished product. I think he is, like, however good he's going to be, he's like kind of there right now, right? And what he reminds me of, and I don't want people to balk at this if they haven't watched his whole career, but he reminds me of Alexander Volkanovski when he first got to the UFC. And what I mean by that is, what was his positive attributes? What were things that you liked about the guy? He was dogged tough. He was a competitor. He wanted to win every round, every position, get in your face. He was a guy who was committed to his offense. And we saw him get hurt. People forget this. We saw him get hurt against Chad Mendes. We saw him get hurt against some of these guys. And he would do what? Cower away? No, he'd bite down on the mouthpiece and say, you and me right here. Yeah, I got hurt. I'm not afraid of that. Let's go. Me and you right now. And he would get in their face and break them mentally. Say, I don't care about my own health and safety. I'm here to fight you right now until the bitter end. So you got to kill me or I'm going to keep coming. And you remember what he did to Brian Ortega and all these guys. When he would get put in a bad spot, he would then get it back in blood. You tried to choke me. That's funny. 60 punches right to your face, right? It's like, you're going to answer for that. And this is a guy in Con Offley who strikes me as the same way. Did I see him get hurt? Oh, yeah. Did I see him get clipped? For sure. The guy's striking defense, that's something that could use a little bit of work, for sure. but he is out there with a committed amount of offense coming forward, trying to take people down, trying to get a hold of them. And when guys have hurt him, he throws back hammers and hurts them back. This guy that he fought, and this is important because people will know his name if you guys taped for Contender Series, guys. Jarrett Wilbraham. He fought Cody Haddon and he lost. He fought Can Offley and he lost. Those are the only losses of his career. So the guy who just got signed and looked like a fucking $1 million on Contender Series, Cody Haddon, he lost to that guy in round 3 via TKO, and he lost to this guy, Can Offley, via sub in round 3. This guy hit a spinning head kick on Can Offley that looked like Can Offley was not going to like immediately recover from. He like took a knee and then he gets back up and starts getting on his ass. And this dude couldn't believe it. He was like, I just fucking spin kicked this dude right in the fucking face. Like, how is he doing this right now? And he just got back on him and broke him mentally, took him down, got on top of him, beat him up, passed the guard, finished him. I was like, yo, this guy plays for keeps. Like, he is just a guy that strikes me as, yeah, you can hurt me, but I can hurt you back. And I didn't see Myron Santos and think to myself, like, this is the best striker I've ever seen. This is the second coming. Like, that's what some people, it sounds like they're thinking about this guy. Like, this guy is so good. Maybe he is, but he's a young guy. I think his grappling and wrestling is not as good as Offley. Offley's a guy that has a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This guy has a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, recent promotion as far as I know. I just watched Santos weigh in and he didn't have 1 foot off the scale. Wrong. Go back and look. Go back and look. There's pictures of it online, brother. Go back and look. Check again. Go see, because I disagree with your assessment. But in any case, right, what I see is a guy that went out there and he's fought some pretty tough guys on the regional scene. Like I mentioned, this Jarrett Wilbraham guy, he only has legit losses. He's had 10 fights. And I think that if he gets one more win, he could be a guy on Contender Series next year. You know what I'm saying? Like, he seems like that kind of guy. So when I'm looking at, this kind of fight, I say the guy who's got the wrestling and the grappling upside, who's probably closer to his like finished product as a fighter, is Can Offley. And so for me, I just think that makes him an attractive underdog in this spot. So I think this is a fun, interesting fight, and I like Can Offley. What do you think, brother?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that if it's a striking fight, a striking battle, that and there's no success, obviously, from the grappling, which is a big if, then I would think that the line would be kind of correct for Santos being as big a favorite as he is. But when you start to say, like, if this is not a kickboxing fight, then this is where I start to agree. And then the props for this fight are interesting to me, that like Offley decision is like plus 430, plus 450, and his split prop is 12-1. I just think that this type of fight is like, I mean, he might be. It's like Dan Argueta had. He absolutely grapple fucked Santos, and I think that he has a chance. I think he's a fighter that if he fought an Offley, that Offley would have an awfully tough time against Dan Argueta. See what I did there? Offley. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just think that this fight, for what you're saying, if it's a grapple fest and if it's takedowns and rinse and repeat, I think Offley by a decision is going to be a really good line at plus 430 or plus 450. And then his split at 12-1 in case he's not winning on the feet, or it's kind of close in a couple of rounds and he is getting hit, which he does. Santos to me just doesn't, like, when you're talking about the striking, like, I think he hits hard. I don't think that he puts a lot of volume out on guys. I think he's got a gigantic reach advantage in this fight, which will probably make it difficult. There you go. Proof in the pudding.
Totally on the fucking scale, huh, buddy? Come on, dude. Don't play with me. Don't fucking play with me. Please continue, Tim.
Yeah, I just think that, Santos to me doesn't really, like, it's not like a guy that if you're saying like Offley's going to get terribly outstruck in this fight on the feet, like, I don't think it is. I think he's probably 60-40 losing 40-60 on the feet in this fight versus Santos if it is. And he's probably just getting a little bit out volume and a little bit bigger strikes against him. But then when you add the grappling and you add the wrestling, I just think that it's a 430 or plus 430 on points for Offley and split plus 1200. I think those are good lines. Do you think that the points is better than the sub for him in this fight, or do you think he might get the sub?
I'm 99% sure that my write-up was that this fight would be a sub or decision. So basically, like whichever was the better plus number is probably the one I would go with. I don't think that Myron Santos is like a quitter, right? Like I don't think he even gave up against Dan Argueta. He just got owned. That was like what happened, right? And the thing about that, he was a young guy. So I'll give him a pass there and say, hey, he's a young man. He could get better from there. But the thing about that was I saw the same situation starting to develop, I thought, against Edwin Cooper Jr. But the difference was that guy fell apart and self-immolated, right? It was all in his head, So I think that when I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, Myron Santos, fine fighter developing. He's missing fights. He's missing weight. He's having fights canceled because he's missing weight by so much. Like he's had a lot of problems outside the octagon. And then when I'm thinking about, okay, this other guy is basically calling for top fights after this. Like he's saying like, yo, give me somebody in the top 5, in the top 10. That's his level of confidence. Dan Argueta is a 135 pounder. Dan Argueta fought him at bantamweight and fucking took his lunch money for the duration. Did he cut too much weight? Again, I'll say like probably cut too much weight there. But in this fight, he's half cutting weight, half not cutting weight. He's fucking dangling off the scale, hanging on by 2 toes. And then I'm looking at a guy who just seems to me like, he's using his weight to get an advantage on people. But I don't know that the weight is going to matter if the fight gets on the mat, right? Like once it gets to the mat, I think the skill differential will be substantial. And like Fletcher, again, like his calling card's supposed to be the grappling, right? I want to wrestle you. I want to grapple you. I want to get on top. This guy not only out-wrestled him, out-grappled him, he fucking beat his ass. So I think that Offley is a guy that I could see competing right now, in featherweight fights and doing fine in the UFC. So I think both of these guys are UFC level, right? Which is not always the case for the Ultimate Fighter. Shout out to Veronica or whatever her name was, Juliana Miller. That's what it was. Shout out to Juliana Miller. Wish her well, but feels like this is an Ultimate Fighter finale that both these guys will stick around for a while, in my opinion. But in any case, my brother, we can move along to the next one. And this is the middleweight final. It's Ryan Loder taking on Robert Valentin. Why don't you start us off, Tim, if you have anything on this one? I know you said these aren't your favorite, but did you see anything on the middleweight side that you liked?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is a interesting battle here. I mean, I think you get with what's his face with Valentin. He's clearly a more dangerous striker. The guy likes to just pretty much go pretty aggro with the striking. I think he could throw himself a little bit into harm's way by being super aggro in this fight and kind of throwing himself off balance or putting himself in a position where he could get clinched or taken down. Loder seems to be a really good wrestler outside the cage. Did a little studying on him outside the cage, like just a D1 wrestler, very successful in college with wrestling. I think he's an All-American multiple years. And I just think that it's a pretty like his striking is very kind of like, I think I would just say it's like very wrestly, striking, where he's very safe and he kind of stays at range until he has a chance to either clinch you or shoot a single. Most of the time I was watching his takedowns, they're usually like off a cage push. He wasn't really shooting like a ton of power doubles or singles. But I also thought like that Valentin's takedown defense has been like not great. And I just think that this is a kind of a fight where it's kind of like, I think Valentin could KO him, and I think Loder could win a decision like pretty handily. Like I think it could be just a grapple fest, and it might even be a situation where Valentin might be like a pretty big underdog going into like round 3 if he's losing clearly in round 1 and round 2, and then he gets a finish in round 3 if Loder's gassing. And it's just like one of those, kind of just clear, oh, this guy's winning. What the fuck just happened? I don't know. It'd be interesting to hear what you have to say on Loder's gas tank. I didn't see enough of his fights to see if he can proactively grapple and get his game off for 15 minutes and just be this kind of the same rinse and repeat type of wrestler. It's really hard to wrestle for 15 minutes straight. So I know a lot of guys can go for the first 7.5 to maybe 10 minutes, but then they start to mouth breathe and get the meat sweats. So interesting to hear what you have to say on it. But I think it's like I've got Loader by decision in a couple of parlays just to have fun in the Lambo parlays and things like that. But be interesting to see what you got to say on his cardio, because I think his wrestling is good enough. And I know that the takedown defense and on Valentin, I don't think is that great. So if he's able to get him down, do you think he can hold him down? And do you think he could last doing this for 15 minutes straight? Be interesting to hear what you got to say.
It's interesting. I think of Ryan Loader as a guy I couldn't get a clear read on based on his fights on the show. So he's another guy that if you ask me what I'll be doing between now and when I submit my article in the morning, it will be watching his regional tape because that's one piece of the research process I haven't gotten to yet. Now, when you ask me about the show, I thought that the guy he fought in the semifinal just, again, like kind of reminded me of Edwin Cooper Jr., right? He's just out there letting the fight pass him by, like didn't attempt very much offense seriously, little bit too little too late, started to throw in round 3, try and chase him down a little bit. Loader was like, yeah, I ain't having this shit, and just answered with some hard counters. But his cardio looked fine. It wasn't pressed, right? Like it wasn't tested in that fight that went the full 3 rounds. He basically went out there, fought for 2 minutes pretty conservatively, 3 minutes conservatively, then got a takedown and fought conservatively from on top. And his opponent was just getting busted up by the jab, not throwing very much, watching the fight pass him by. And so then he realized, he's like, I don't need to take this guy down. I could literally just jab him, stand on the outside, and he can't do shit about it. So he seems like a cerebral fighter, a guy who understands what's going on. But it didn't tell me like, oh, this guy's ceiling is so high. Like, oh, like it's just like, okay, fine. Like he went out there and won the fight. Just told me the other guy was not very good. So okay, noted. The Tom Theocrist fight, nothing burger. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Like he took the guy down instantly. He submitted him instantly. The guy looked like he didn't have neither a hope nor a prayer of doing anything once he got to the ground in that fight. And I guess you could say that's credit to Loader, but I also think that was just demerit to that guy. I don't think he had much of a ground game. His biggest regret after the fight, he said, I wish I could have shown off more of my striking. Not, I wish I wasn't so GD bad on the ground that I got finished instantly, right? He's like, I wish I had shown off my striking. So in any case, I'm thinking to myself, okay, Loader hasn't really faced a guy, in my view, yet that knows how to grapple. I think Valentin is not like if you were saying like, who's going to go win a jiu-jitsu title, right? Way more likely that Loader would win that because he could go out there and control people, score some points, get on the board. And I think that when you're looking at this Valentin guy, like he'll just try and rip your arm off. He'll try and break your leg. He'll try and choke you if he gets the chance. He's a lot more aggressive and like, I call him like a catch wrestler, right? He's just looking for a snack that he can get something, he'll catch it and try and squeeze it and finish you. He's that kind of guy. What armbar he used to finish Paddy McCrory, the Irishman, I still don't know. Turned the guy's arm inside out. It didn't even look like a real move, except that the guy's arm was about to snap in half, right? So he's kind of creative, violently creative. When I think about how this fight could play out, I could definitely see the path for Loader, right? Like you said, decision, just go out there, be smart, be cognizant, get the takedowns when you need them. I think that's the case, the bullish case for the underdog. I think the case for his opponent here is that he's the much more violent guy. I don't think he's going to let this fight be like, let's go out there and fight in slow motion for 15 minutes and, you dictate with the jab and I stand back here and just let you do it. I think he's going to try and get aggressive. Like maybe that'll get him finished, but he's going to try and get aggressive. He's going to try and get in this guy's face. I believe he's going to try and punch hard. He's going to try and hit him with hard shots. He's going to try and look for elbows. The one thing I will say about his experience, he didn't fight the best guys on the show. I think Paddy McCrory is better than some people were giving him credit for. I saw people shitting on him. He landed a great shot on Valentin. It probably was the closest anybody came to beating him, right? And then you look at the other guy he fought. Valentin basically saw him coming in, just closed down that elbow, folded it over, and knocked the guy silly in like 10 seconds. So it just seemed to me like, okay, this guy is violent, aggressive, knows where his bread is buttered. And then when he got hurt in a fight, he showed not a one-trick pony. I have another place I could take it. Kind of like Edmund Shahbazyan and Dobson, right? Edmund got hurt, so what did he do? Change the phase. All right, now I'm taking you down. You sit down for a second. You relax. That's a good way to be able to get back on track. And I think about this as like, okay, I have a guy in, Valentin in this spot who showed, hey, I got hurt. I got buzzed. I'm not going to just swing until one of us falls down. I'm going to go out there and say, let's test his ground game then. Let's bring it to a different phase. Let's get in the clinch. Let's grab a hold of this guy so I don't get knocked out at distance. That for me just showed us a little bit of a sign of maturity as well. And it's the reason why he advanced in the show, right? Instead of going out there and making it crazy with a guy who had just landed a hard shot, he was like, let's test his ground game, and then instantly finished him. So I think in this spot, it's going to be a hard fight. But I think Valentin is just a more violent, dangerous, aggressive guy. I think eventually that bill is going to come due. For Loder, who's been in these fights, and like I said, the guys kind of just didn't make it that violent with him, right? Kind of let him off the hook for like, you want to stand on the outside and, make it very clean and technical. And I don't see this guy as that at all. He's going to make it very untechnical. He's going to be spinning, throwing crazy shit. And again, that could lead to him getting clipped, but I just think it's going to lead to him having some violent opportunities. Shout out to my guy Glenbot in the chat, says Valentin KO round 2 or 3 would be interesting. Yeah, I think it's possible. I don't know exactly how his cardio projects. I also have to watch some more tape on him outside of the show, but that's where I'm at. I think it's an interesting scrap. And I think I have to just do a little more due diligence, right? I went back and watched Offley. I went back and watched the LFA fights for Myron Santos. I just haven't had the chance to do that for the Loder fight because I wasn't as passionate about it. So I'll go back and check that one out and see if my mind has changed. But with that being said, my brother, we move on to the ladies in the co-main event. We've got Angela Overkill Hill taking on the baby shark, Tabitha Ricci. And I think that this is a fun scrap that is destined to end in split decision. I'm kidding, of course. How do you feel about this one, my brother? The king of the split decision himself. Am I onto something here? How do you see this one going?
Yeah, you're onto something, but I think the books are onto it. They've let out the lowest split decision prop number I've ever seen in my life. It's plus 225. That is the grossest shit ever. Like it's plus 400 for Ricci and plus 500 for Hill, which is legit the worst lines I've ever seen in my life because they know that what is going to happen. What's going to happen is if this is a striking battle where these guys are not grappling, and I think obviously Baby Shark's going to try to grapple, but if she can't get her down, this is going to be a clear like Hill outstrikes her by 30 to 40 strikes, and this fight goes to split somehow, because the judges are just watching Ricci's.
The Callum Walsh effect.
Yes, 100%. It's the Vanessa Demopoulos / Tabitha Ricci factor. Like, just you get these guys these judges got the lotion under their desk, and they're going to town and they're watching the fight, and I don't know, man. It's my only explanation. I won't keep going on this very much, but I think the fight goes really, really high percentage. It's going to be greasy as shit for either fighter. I think that judges love Ricci and they really, really don't like Hill. Hill's lost like a ton of split decisions in fights that she won. So I just don't think that this is going to get greasy as hell. I think anybody who bets this fight is going to be, pissed off, most likely.
I see where you're coming from, my brother. I think this is a fight where early in the week, my gut feeling was, it's probably going to be Angela Hill in a close one. And the longer I thought about it, the more I'm leaning towards the Ricci side. And I could tell you specifics for why. Number one, Angela Hill has allowed, I think, 17. This is off the top of my head, so don't butcher me, guys. But I believe 17 out of 25 of her UFC level opponents have gotten at least one takedown, right? And even in her recent fights, that's still been true oftentimes. She's not had a very good winning record in those kind of fights. And the thing about Tabitha Ricci on the other side is she's won every single UFC fight in which she's recorded one or more takedowns. The problem for her was when she could not take down Lupita Godinez, who's a natural wrestler. That is her base. And then when she could not take down Manon Firo, who was way bigger and beat the shit out of her, right? when I'm thinking of this fight, I'm thinking to myself, Tabitha Ricci probably not going to get armbarred or guillotined by Angela Hill. Not only does she have a better jiu-jitsu pedigree overall, she has very short limbs, right? And this is why I thought she was going to dominate Polyana Viana. I was like, what can Polyana Viana do to her, right? Except knock her out on the feet. I was like, outside of that, I just think Polyana's throwing dead because she's got one move. This girl doesn't have arms that are long enough to get armbarred. It's going to be a really tough mark, you know? So I bet her in that fight, and I felt good about that. But I also bet her against Manon Fiorot. Why? Because I was like, this girl's got a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Who knows what happens if she takes her down? We saw size is a factor in WMMA, right? But since then, she's been a girl that's been basically favored to win most of her UFC fights. She's a very short price in this one, kind of like some of the other spots where she's come through in the UFC. She was a dog, I believe, against Godinez, if my memory serves, and as well against Manon Fiorot. So the market's been pretty hip to when things were going to go sideways for Tabitha Ricci, at least so far. And I think in this spot, the market's kind of saying, okay, can she get a takedown? Yes. Probably at some point the answer is yes. Angela Hill does a lot of upright striking. She does a lot of knees in the clinch, things like that, where just one mistake, one person barrels into you a little bit while you're up on one foot and you fall over. I think that you could see a Tabitha Ricci potentially advance positions and show off her ground game in this fight. I think Angela Hill has looked great in her recent fights, but the one thing I will note is her teammate, her friend, Jessica Panay. They do this podcast together, all those things. You know, I think that they have kind of trained together, probably a lot of the same ingrained habits, right? And I think of a girl, you know, like Tabitha Ricci as somebody that's going to study before this fight and say, how can I take out Angela Hill? And I do think the way to attack Angela Hill would be to get her into a situation where you could take her back, you know, because then you're in a really dominant position, right? It doesn't matter if somebody's made a lot of improvements to their grappling. You could put them back into some negative sequencing, some negative chains of thought. And I think that you could definitely put Angela Hill in those kind of tough situations. It's been a while, but I believe Randa Marcos submitted her, you know, and that was a bad look. I think that was in 2019. She's come leaps and bounds since then. I argued earlier this week, she's shown her best form of her career to date, but the physicality that she's shown off in her career could drop off a cliff at any point, right, at her current age. And on top of that, these last couple of fights, she's been able to bail herself out with that guillotine pull, right? It's like, can you guillotine pull on this girl? No, she'll just pop her head out. And now she's in the top position. So I think that those are the kind of things that make it so what's been working for Angie and what's made her a even more fun and respected girl in this division. I just think this is kind of where the rubber meets the road, unfortunately. And it's probably going to be close and competitive, but I do think it's going to be another fight where Tabitha Ricci gets one takedown. And so far, that's been the ticket, right? If she gets one, she wins the fight. So I think she's getting a takedown. I think she's winning the fight. But I think it's going to be close. So fun fight. I like and respect Angie, but you know, the plus money on her name with such a popular UFC fighter is also a little bit interesting to me. Next up, my man, it's the main event, the one people have been waiting for, the natural Caio Borralho taking on the Killa Gorilla, Jared Cannonier. He said, let's find out who's the baddest, scariest motherfucker in the division. And we're going to get our answer, Tim. Who do you think it is? Do you like the Killa Gorilla or do you like Caio Borralho to get it done in the main event on Saturday night?
I like Jared in this fight. I think the line is a little bit stupid. I think Jared is obviously, 40 years old or around 40 years old at this point. I don't think he's washed by any sense. I think he is showing his durability is starting to show signs that it's deteriorating a little bit, but I thought it was an early stoppage versus Imavov. I think Imavov would fuck up Caio and be able to stop the takedowns. I think Caio has, there's a lot of people on the sub thinking that it's going to be just an easy takedown, an easy back take, and it's going to be all she wrote. And I mean, I know you've been very successful betting Caio. Like I've had up and down relationship with Caio. The fights that I are unforgivable to me are the Abus not being able to finish Abus in round 2 and round 3, not being able to finish Petrosian in round 2 and round 3 with subs, just basically just laying on these guys and just like, all right, I've got your back. I'm fine. I can just hold this position for a long while. I can just lay on you. I'll just win a decision. win is a win type of situations. And I just don't think that it's going to be easy in rounds. If he doesn't get him down in rounds 1 and rounds 2 easily, I don't think it's going to be easier in 3, 4, and 5 for him to be able to get takedowns against Jared. Also, I think it's going to be interesting to see how he reacts to some of the leg kicks, and the calf kicks from Jared are just like fucking hitting him with a tree. So, and interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see if he is able to get takedowns after that, or if he's immobilized from some of those calf kicks, because I do think it'll take about 4 or 5 really good ones to really mess up his drive and being able to push off his legs well. I think there's a volume edge and a clear power edge for Jared as well. And I don't know. It's just Borralho's just not been a guy that's been like, if I'm standing with guys, I'm putting just major stamps on rounds versus guys that are solid. He's been given a bunch of fighters that are perfect matchups for him and beating them. This is his toughest test to date. And I just feel like it's like, okay, how do you get to Caio at this line and saying like, if he's not able to get, a ton of wrestling success, like against Muradov, like he was taken down twice by Muradov and he was reversed by him once. Like, I feel like there's certain fighters that are just like not super, super great grapplers that he's been fighting and matched up against that have just been perfect matchups for him. Like everybody can take down Mikal. Everybody can take down Petrosian. Everybody can take, like, these are just like absolutely just set up spots for him. And I just think this is the UFC saying, all right, let's see what you got. Let's see, this is your first real test competition wise, and let's see what you actually can do. So to me, I think it's a Jared spot. I think I like Jared by decision plus 550, Jared by split plus 1400. I think as this fight gets going, if he doesn't get an early finish for Caio, I think it's going to be tougher and tougher. I also don't think like the round 3s against Petrosian and the round 3s against Abus, that it wasn't even like him possibly being tired. And that's why he didn't go for it as much. And he just knew that he had already won the first 2 rounds and he didn't need to push. And he was just going to just hold and not really, put any danger to winning it and possibly gassing himself out and then losing by making a bad mistake. So be interesting to see what his cardio looks like in the championship rounds. Be interesting to see how he deals with those rounds in the first couple rounds of the fight. And if he goes a little bit more slowly, because he already is pretty low volume. So interesting to see what you got to say, because I think it's a Killa Gorilla time this week.
Yeah, I mean, from a money line standpoint, I definitely understand people liking the Cannonier side. He's a proven vet. He's a seasoned, professional in this division as well as in the UFC. He's 10-7 overall in the UFC, which doesn't sound that great, but his only losses in the middleweight division: Nasruddin Imavov, Israel Adesanya, and Robert Whittaker. So 2 out of 3 of those guys, UFC champions, very solid strength of schedule throughout. He also beat Sean Strickland, a UFC champion. Did I think he won that fight? Between you and me, no, I did not. But I still thought, obviously an impressive fight, a super close fight. It's not like he got blown out of the water. He fought extremely close. So I think of Jared Cannonier as a seasoned, great fighter, and the fact that he maximized his career going from 205 heavyweight down to 185 and then was on fire, right? Beat multiple black belts in a row, David Branch and what's his name? Jack Hermanson, right? He was able to stop those guys. He was a huge underdog in those fights. So I think there's a lot of impressive things that you could say about Cannonier. But the problems I have with him coming into this fight are the fact he's coming in on a quick turnaround, right? He got finished in his last fight, admittedly a little bit early, but he definitely absorbed some damage, right? And I believe that fight was pushed back because he had a knee problem. So if I remember correctly, like he was supposed to fight and then he couldn't fight because he had a knee problem. Then he came back to fight and, he looked a little bit tired, I thought, in that fight. I thought he was starting to slow down just a bit. I thought Imavov was coming on strong. But then on top of that, Imavov was able to hurt him. And then, the referee intervenes a little prematurely there. But I think of a guy like Caio Borralho, very smart fighter. Right? A guy who brings a lot of intelligence to the game. And so a lot of times when he's out there, he's finding a way to win, right? If he needs to, he'll hold on. If he needs to, he'll get on the back. If he needs to, he'll do these things. But he basically approaches his opponents, tries to be a little bit strategic, right? He moves in and out with his footwork. He doesn't try and stick around in the pocket. He lands, some powerful shots and gets in and gets out. And then when he can, he wrestles very well. I think he's a good wrestler, honestly. Like, I've liked what I've seen from him in terms of he gets somebody to think like, yo, we're striking. Like, dude, let's figure out who's a tougher striker. And as soon as they start to commit and say like, oh, fuck you, I'm going to throw so hard on this one, he just level changes right underneath it, double leg, spins out to the side. The thing about Cannonier, I had thought in my mind, like, this guy just doesn't get taken down. That was like my memory of Cannonier, because I was like, yo, remembering how he D'd up Jack Hermanson, like I said from that point forward, like, Jack Hermanson does not like guys with muscle, bro. He feels this guy, he's getting double underhooks, lifting him back up to his feet. I was like, Jack Hermanson looked at him and went, fuck that. Like, I do not need these problems in my life. I think about Caio Borralho. He's gone out there and grappled Jailton Almeida, didn't get submitted, right? He went out there, went to decision with Jailton. I think it was like points in overtime or something, right? This is a guy that can go out there and grapple at a high level with big guys. So I look at Jared Cannonier, and the footage with Derek Brunson is where I'm like, that's not good. Because it's one thing to get hurt by Derek Brunson and then almost rear naked choked at the end of the first round. That's not a great visual, but it's also like, okay, it happens. I understand. He got taken down 2 or 3 times by Derek in that fight. Derek's grabbing a hold of the single leg, run the pipe, sit him down. Grab a hold of the double leg on the fence, pick him up, slam him down. I was like, what in the F is happening, right? He's getting held down in the half guard, and eventually he was able to work his way back up. I know that Derek's a strong guy, right? He's gotten on top of good fighters before, but the way he was getting on top of him, he's not an energy efficient guy. He goes out there and spends all his energy all the time. And that's why he's always tired at the 7-minute mark. I bet so much money on Jared Cannonier in that fight, because I was like, if this fight goes 7 minutes, I know who won it. It's over, because I just know that Jared can fight for the full 15 and he can go out there and press. So he got in all these terrible, awful situations, but still I thought was justified. But now it's like, he's 40 years of age. The durability is getting worse, not better. He's been knocked out many times. He's been knocked out at heavyweight. He's been knocked out at... So he has the distinction, right, of being the only guy with knockouts in heavyweight, middleweight, and light heavyweight, right? But he's also the only guy to be knocked out in all 3, right? He got knocked out by Dom Reyes. He got knocked out by Sean Jordan. And he got knocked out by Nasruddin Imavov, though it was a close one. Guys, he was on the verge of being knocked out by Robert Whittaker. Let's not forget that. He was badly, badly hurt by Marvin Vettori, right? He's been badly hurt in 4 of his last 7 UFC fights. That's the truth. So whether you want to say he got knocked out or he didn't, he's 40 years of age, and he's been badly hurt in 4 of his last 7 UFC fights. That's not a great look coming in against a guy who's young, durable, right? He's on a 15-fight win streak. Pretty hard guy to put away. Okay, he's a tough guy, and he's a game-planning guy that wants to go out there and win. Here's the other thing. You got a fighting nerd, right? He tells you, I'm a fighting nerd. Look at my glasses. Look at how I'm talking about it. He called him out. Right? He could have called out Vettori or Allen or any of these guys. Maybe he doesn't get it. But he called out Jared Cannonier. I wonder why. Maybe he watched the Derek Brunson fight and he said, yo, I can fucking take this guy down. Like 100% I can take him down. Maybe he watched one of the other fights where, against Imavov, he's like, maybe he can go out there and punch this guy really hard and hurt him, get a highlight reel on his resume, blow something up there. I think of Caio Borralho as a smart guy. And so in the past, I had a bullish read on like take him, by KO against Jesse Murray because it was an overmatched opponent. Take him on the money line against this guy because he's plus money and I thought he could go out there and win. In this fight, it's a lot harder for me to find like this is the clear value, but I think he's live to win by KO. But I think he's more likely to win by submission. Why? It would be a feather in his cap. 3 guys have knocked out Jared Cannonier. Nobody's ever submitted him. He's a very good grappler. He's not bad on the ground. Don't mistake me. But Caio Borralho is the kind of guy that would like to go out there and prove a point. Say, hey, not only am I one of the best guys in the division, not only can I finish like you guys said I couldn't, I'm the only guy that's done this. That's my reason for the title shot. This guy trained with Damian Maia for 7 years. You think he doesn't know how to fucking take somebody's back? Yes, he does. And Jared Cannonier, guys, I could show you the picture of him fucking like this against my guy Derek Brunson, okay? And I'm the Derek Brunson sub-truther, okay? I bet it plus 1,400 against Kevin Holland. And he, by the way, locked him in a head and arm choke for fucking 15 minutes and didn't finish it. And then I bet it against Darren Till, right? The guy who's given sideline advice from the peanut gallery to Israel Adesanya, got the same fate, right? Round 3 submission, ended the same way. It's like, okay, this guy, Derek Brunson goes out there and attempts submissions, no doubt about it. Is he fucking black belt level Caio Borralho? No, he's like a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and a guy that knows how to wrestle. Caio Borralho knows how to wrestle. He's a fucking black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he's good. He's a good black belt. So a lot of times he's on these guys' back, and he's like, am I going to spend a lot of energy? No. Because here's the other thing. You go back and watch the footage against like Muradov, for example. Dude, he's in great spots. He's beating up on Muradov. He's in great positions. He's looking to go for the submissions. He fell off the top more than one time because he was getting very aggressive. Like, he was trying to do what everybody asks you to. Go out there, and if you're going to be on top, look for subs and whatever. Should he have been a little more aggressive with the ground and pound instead of the subs? Yeah, that's my preference, right? But he's a jiu-jitsu guy, so he's like, I'm trying to go for these subs. I'm trying to get this. And he would dominate 3 minutes of the round and then end up on bottom. And then he'd still be sweeping the guy and whatever right before the round ends. But it's these kind of situations where he's very comfortable just playing around on the ground and messing around, going position to position. I think in this fight, that's the exact opposite of what you want to do with Cannonier, because he's a fucking murderous puncher on the ground. When this guy's on top of people, dude, he's throwing hammers. He's trying to kill my guy, Derek Brunson. The corner's like, please, referee, intervene. What are you waiting for? Like, are you crazy? Because he's just posturing up, elbow through the floor. I think of this as like a tall order, right? It's a difficult ask of Caio Borralho. I think he has the ability. I think he has the skill. I think he's going to take down Jared Cannonier, and I think he's going to submit him in the first 3 rounds. So it's not like, I'm running to the window, minus 240 on Caio Borralho, take all my money. Nothing like that. I do think Jared Cannonier deserves your respect, but I think at 40 years of age, I think there's a lot of things working against him in terms of the timelines. I think he needs the money in terms of, hey, my career doesn't have much left to it, so I got to get here and get as much money as fast as possible. And I think for Caio Borralho, he's a 10-year investment for the UFC. He's got, 16, 25 more fights, right? In that range of how many times he's going to walk back out there. Jared Cannonier, be lucky if it's 5. And that's not me trying to be disrespectful or dismissive or anything like that. It's the reality of the game. He's doing 5-round fights in the middleweight division where people are fucking punting each other in the head with their shins. Like, you can't do that sustainably after 40 years of age for much longer. So I think he's out here for a good time, not a long time. And I think Caio Borralho wants to be a world champion. I think that's 2 different guys. I think they're at different points in their career. So for me, I like the Caio Borralho side, but I'm going out and keep my hands clean to the money line. Shout out to my guy Steiny, says nerd world order. That's what we're looking for. Caio Borralho and his fighting nerds. They've taken over the UFC. Can they keep it going on Saturday night? Only one way to find out. Thank you so much to my brother from another Tim for coming through, breaking down all these fights. It's always a pleasure, my man. Please let the people know, where can they find you? I got the links already in the description box below, but anything else that you want to get off your chest, I appreciate your time, my brother.
Thanks as always, dude. This is a blast. Thanks for having me on again. On Lambo Plays every Friday night with Narco Cop, and at Timothy_Triano on Twitter, and that's about it.
I absolutely love it. The other thing I got to say, shout out to the sharpest chat in the game. Thank you to each and every one of you guys who's rocking with us live. We still have right now on X, 320 people rocking with us. On YouTube, 107 people rocking with us. So 427 of you guys rocking with us live at just about 3 a.m. in the morning. Can't thank you guys enough for being here. If you don't mind, drop a like, get subscribed, and if you have comments, questions, concerns, fire them off below the show, and I'm happy to get to as many of them as possible before the fights kick off tomorrow. If you guys like reading about fights, you can either find my articles on Roto Grinders or you can hit me up on Patreon. It's all down in the description below. Every fight, every week, I have a write-up for it. I can't promise you they'll be right, but I promise you there'll be a lot of effort, energy, and intensity that goes into each one of them, and I'll try my damn best every time. So I'm excited to get back to work. My brother, I'm closing up shop here on a great stream and going right back to work, watching some more fights and writing up this article before all is said and done. So God bless you all. Thank you to the Night Owls who are rocking with us live. Come back next time. We're having all the same fun again. Good luck on UFC Vegas 96, everybody.